to unmute. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call vote here of the board. Mr. Kinnermans.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
I guess I do everyone, even though everyone's not voting. Mr. Faya.
Here.
And Mr. Swaim, welcome.
Thank you. Here.
Great. Let's go ahead and get started. 7 p.m. Ashbrook Properties, LLC. Who is here for 110 Conant Street?
Hi, good evening. My name is Brooks Ware. I'm here to discuss the special permit application for 110 Conant.
Great, thanks. You can begin.
Okay, sure. So I guess just to summarize the project particulars, which are in the special permit narrative, I wanted to mention that there is a single family home currently on our parcel, built approximately 1946. It is a 3-bedroom unit, approximately 1,620 square feet of living area. And we also have a garage on the parcel, which appears, just in terms of its dimensions and not exceeding the amount of space on the property from a FAR standpoint, is okay, but is too close to the west border of the property and maybe non-conforming in that manner. We plan to demolish both structures and remove the existing pavement, which has a driveway cut that goes to Conant Street, and replace the structure with a new 2-family structure, which is conforming in every way from setbacks as well as floor area ratio, height restrictions, etc., as if it were another single family home upon the lot. We'd like to go ahead and build a new 2-family structure, a townhouse type structure, which you can also see in the provided materials. The front and left side elevations are probably best to take a look at here. The plan and the special permit request is very consistent with the 2018 Envision Concord long-range plan goals, specifically around providing, new moderately sized housing units, and there's more to it than that, and it's also quite consistent with the most recent bylaw amendment to section 4.2.2.1 of the zoning bylaw. Again, specifically with regard to the by right FAR. What's not necessarily in the redevelopment project narrative that we provided is we think significant improvements to the traffic flow and safety, and a pretty substantial net reduction in the area of pavement on the site. It's over 1,000 square feet less pavement when you compare the existing long driveway to the side-by-side driveway that we're going to install, leading to Wedgewood Common. From a traffic flow standpoint, that's important because Conant Street is so much busier, and you only have the ability to back out onto Conant Street. Wedgewood Common is much quieter, and the driveway opening will be much further from the intersection as well. Above all, the redevelopment of 110 Conant reflects new and moderately sized housing for the town. Those two don't tend to go together with regard to the new construction that we see mostly. It's very, very much in keeping with the prevailing scale in the neighborhood, which actually, given the apartments at Wedgewood Common as well as Concord Commons condominiums, is really quite mixed anyway in terms of the types of buildings you see surrounding the Rideout Park area of West Concord. There's single family homes of a lot of different sizes and ages. There are a good amount of two families, both on the Conan Street side as well as the Maple Street side of Rideout Playground. It's quite mixed, and we believe this is very much in keeping with that mix. And it also really reflects our belief in looking for underutilized parcels in the town, adding to diversity of housing stock by finding these redevelopment opportunities and the better range of choices that represents. For example, our last project, which is on the opposite corner of Rideout Playground, was very well received market-wise. We envisioned 3 smaller units going in. Again, as I said, diagonally across in general from where our parcel is here. Found a family that downsized, a single parent family, and someone moving out of Boston, and those options were exactly what ended up coming to pass with regard to that last project, and we hope to do more of the same. There's more to the sort of philosophical reasons why we want to go ahead with this kind of development, being whether the walkability, smart growth and density type ideas, and it clearly being very transit oriented in terms of the walkability to the train station in West Concord. That is the general overview of what our application's about, and happy to answer any questions.
That's great. Thank you. Let me go ahead and open up to the board for any questions.
Hi, this is Jim. I just have a real quick technical question, which is, I know that, or I see that Wedgewood Common is listed as a private way, and I think it is. So you do have access to Wedgewood Common for these curb cuts and all that?
Yes.
Road?
As part of our transaction to acquire the property, we did also get a commitment from the Wedgewood Common owners to provide that access running with the deed.
Thank you. That was it for me.
Yeah, that was actually, I had the same question. So that answers my question as well. Anyone else on the board?
Yeah, so a quick question. You mentioned that you have less pavement on this plan, which looks to be the case, but did you do the total impervious calculation? Are you reducing the overall impervious area?
The exclusive of the building, yes.
Yeah, but inclusive of the building, you are increasing the impervious area.
Inclusive of the building, it does represent a slight increase to the lot coverage.
That's it.
Ravi?
No, I had the kind of same question about whether the other driveway was going to no longer be there, and kind of how that plays out. So I'm all good.
Okay. Tom, did you have anything before I open? to
No
public
question, no comments.
comment? Okay, let me go ahead and open to public comment then. I see Pamela Dritt, if you could unmute.
Thank you. Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green, Unit 4. I'm just interested in what kind of utilities you're going to do. Are you going to be all electric? And can we encourage you to do that? I don't think we should offer any special permits unless you do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The intention was to utilize the existing infrastructure in place, which is both the natural gas service as well as the Town of Concord water and sewer connections, which we have Board of Health approval for. To the extent that all electric is a feasible from a cost standpoint way to go. It's something that we'll consider as we look at the overall building mechanicals. It's not how we've preliminarily budgeted the project at this point.
There could be significant savings to you. You would, by using the heat pump system, not just from the town, but from the state also, you would get both cooling, central cooling and heat, and it would be environmentally a really big deal. Mothers Out Front and other people are strongly pushing against gas hookups. It would save you massive amounts of
As
infrastructure.
opposed to talking here, I just say we heard your comment. Brooks, we heard your response. Do you have any other response, or?
I
You're
don't.
free to talk offline, obviously.
Other than I'm sorry, Pamela. In general, I think that I would agree with your point, and it's worth us considering. I'd say almost logistically, and especially because National Grid is exceptionally hard to deal with on the execution side. It may actually represent an opportunity. It's just not something that we can commit to one way or the other based on the permit application yet.
Elizabeth, did you have something to add to this?
So working with the sustainability director, it's posted to the planning board's webpage, but I can send to Brooks a cost analysis that was done for Concord comparing the cost of going all electric, and that it isn't a significant cost difference. So I can send that to Brooks.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Any other, Jack Madigan?
Yes, Jack Madigan, 215 Prairie Street. I just had a quick question regarding, it's going from a single unit on that lot to a double unit, 2 different units. And both of those units are going to get sewer. I understand the water, but both are going to have access to sewer, or one sewer and one Title V?
There's a
Thank you.
okay, sure, yeah. It is a single sewer connection at the parcel level, which is the way it's been for a long time, and we will use the town water connection, which, sorry, bear with me a second here.
So how it works is that sewer service, there's only a single connection to the town sewer. Each individual unit will come to a single pipe on the property. And then from the property, there will only be one sewer connection.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're doing what's been prescribed by the town water and sewer.
Other questions? Heather, am I missing anyone? I do not see anyone else. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Discussion among the board. Who wants to?
I have a quick question for Elizabeth. 4.2.2.1 is obviously new and other things. Is there anything in specific that, specific findings that you recommend that we need to be looking at here with respect to the approval of the project?
Let me. No, as far as the findings that need to be made, for a two-family, so 2 parking spaces are required for each dwelling unit. While these only have a 1-car garage, the space that's outside the garage counts. So technically they have 2, so you don't need to make any specific waivers to the parking. The finding that the board needs to make is that the 2-family dwelling is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this section, and that and then it would just be the regular findings under section 11.6. There have no, town staff has not raised any issues and concerns about the structure. So it's the general special permit findings, and that the 2-family dwelling is in harmony with the general purpose of this section. I don't know if Brooks talked enough about the floor plan, the square footage. I believe each unit is approximately, Brooks, correct me if I'm wrong, is like approximately 1,800 square feet. Is that, oh.
Brooks, are you still there?
Nope, he's gone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, there
I'm
he is.
here.
There he is. Okay.
appear to be, maybe just on my end. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, my internet connection.
Yeah, no, I can't hear you.
Internet connection is showing as unstable. It just stopped.
Now we see you and hear you. So quickly.
Okay. I'm sorry. I missed the last bit of Elizabeth.
The square footage
Square
of each
footage.
unit.
Oh, the square footage of each unit is 1,714 square feet, plus 572 feet of garage space, which is
So
split. Yeah.
So as far as the intent of this section that town meeting adopted, specifically the planning boards, when they discussed this with the Board of Appeals, was to try and introduce these smaller units, especially smaller units with only 1-car garages close to transit. So, it's my opinion that it does meet the intent of the bylaw.
Great, that's my only question.
Other discussion? I agree with Elizabeth's analysis on that.
Yeah, and as far as 11.6.3 goes, and you've heard me mention it before, is that with an increase in impervious area, I would like we should do something to alleviate the pressure on the town stormwater management, the town stormwater system, and make sure that some of the impacts are mitigated by some infiltration, some downspout infiltration, and we've done it on other projects, and I think that's something to do, something that would benefit 11.6.3.
So the condition would be that roof runoff recharge be incorporated into the project.
That would be great.
That's Brooks, is that something?
in general, we typically see gutters as causing a little bit more problems than they solve, and would typically be using a drip edge around the building to take care of the rainwater coming off of the roof structures.
So the project can incorporate infiltration borders around portions of the house.
As needed.
That will
Yep.
work.
Yep.
Okay. Other comments from the board?
I just want to spend a little more time on the point that Jim raised and Elizabeth answered, which is, is this kind of the intent of the bylaw? And sort of reading, the planning board believes it'll produce incremental units of housing and options for smaller households, etc. What I see here is there was a 1,600 square foot house on this small lot. Now there are going to be two 1,700 plus square foot units. So it's a little different than just taking a house and turning it into a two-family. It's kind of like putting two houses on the spot where there was one. But saying that, I still think that does fit within kind of the intent of these are still, more modestly sized houses that serve the sort of goals that I think were outlined and intended by the bylaw amendment. So I'm fine with it, but I just wanted to kind of make that clarification that we're not looking at something that's turning a structure into, a single family into a multi-family. We're sort of putting two houses where there was one. And, I'm good with this project, but I think there may be scenarios where somebody doing that might not be within the intent of the bylaw here. I think this project is, and I support it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Robbie. Obviously, we'll have to be looking at bigger houses or we probably will be when they're actually divided into two. So I'm comfortable with the size and the scope of this and where it's located. And but I agree with you. Going forward, it should be a consideration. Jim, did you have anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Tom, anything?
Nope, fine, thank you.
Everyone looks like they're about to speak. All right, well, it sounds like we know where the board is. Other conditions that we would consider besides the infiltration. Elizabeth, you're gonna send information about electric utilities. We hope you will consider those. Although we cannot condition that, put that as a condition. Anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, sure. I'd move that we grant a special permit to Ashbrook Properties LLC under sections 4.2.2.1, 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to demolish a unit on 110 Conant Street and replace it with a two-family dwelling in accordance with the application with the conditions regarding infiltration and our other standard conditions with respect to special permits, making a finding under 4.2.2.1 that this is in harmony with the neighborhood and with the spirit of the bylaw, and that it meets the general conditions of 11.6 with respect to, in particular, neighborhood. It's in being in keeping with the neighborhood.
Second.
Great. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans?
Aye.
Ms. Akers-Moore, aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks.
You just muted this one and this one. I think they muted.
Nope, you're not muted. Okay, there, you're muted now. Great. So let's move on to 705, David and Stephanie Perry, 29 Laurel Street.
Hi, Elise, this is Elise. I'm here to speak for the Perrys.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so 29 Laurel Street is a single-family home that was built in 1927. There is a shed on the property that is going to be removed that you can see, sorry, that you can see right there that was being pointed out. The project is in Residence C and it's non-conforming. The lot is non-conforming in both area. It's 9,000 square feet as opposed to 10,000, and also frontage, just under the frontage. 80 is necessary and there's 79.57. So just a little bit off. And it's also non-conforming with the frontage setback of the structure. So we're coming before you for the special permit because we are exceeding the 50% rule. If you, right now, the square footage of the house is 1,762 square feet. The new square footage of the house and the garage is 3,320 square feet. So if we're exceeding the 50% rule by 679 square feet. So that's the special permit. We are still under the allowable FAR. The allowable FAR for this lot is 3,360 square feet. And we, with the garage and the house, the new detached garage in the back, we will be at 3,320. So just under the allowable FAR. So the new addition, you can see, is in the back and the side. We're keeping the complete, look of the existing house. From the street view is going to look the same, except for, from the back, square footage. So that's the existing house is going to look the same. You're going to see an addition on the left, obviously in the back and on the right, but we're, matching all the trim, all the roofs, and, kind of the style of the existing house. And there's, I think that was basically everything that I had. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, do you mind just going back to the plot plan for a second?
Sure.
Are we too close at any of these setbacks?
No, the setbacks are all fine. So
Okay.
those are all to the roof, 15.5
Okay.
on the side and 15.2 on the side. And then on the other is 18.5. We're not going anywhere near the front. That stays the same. And then in the back, because we sit behind the house, it's the 5-foot rule. So we're fine. Those are to the roof, the 5.2 and the 6.7. Those are all to the overhang of the roof. So yeah, no, so the proposed structure meets all the setbacks. The height is obviously, it meets the height.
Okay.
And it meets the
Well,
FAR.
and it's no more non-conforming in the front setback, right?
Exactly, yes. We're not doing anything on the front. That's still the 19.6 to the front porch.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just same question I asked for the applicant before. You significantly increased the impervious area here, right?
Yes.
Are you proposing anything to mitigate that?
I think to Brooks, what he was saying before, we'll definitely do the drip edge around the hall house. I'm not a huge fan like he is of gutters per se, but we're fine with that, putting something to that effect into the conditions.
Other questions or comments from the board? Okay, I'm going to open up to public comment. I will note we received, I think it was 2 letters of support for this application. And let me go ahead and open to public comment. I do not see anyone. Does anyone else see anyone?
This is basically why I subscribed to the Times. Well, why I subscribed to the Boston Globe. Well, that reason online.
If you guys could mute, if you're not, because we can hear you. All right, I don't see anyone. Elizabeth, Heather? Nope. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment.
I see Pamela Dritt with her hand up.
Oh, is Pamela's hand up? Sorry. Go ahead, Pamela. And whoever else is. I'm just going to mute you. Go ahead.
Just to encourage anyone who's doing major remodeling such as this to consider including heat pump system redesign for the entire house.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Elise,
Yeah, we can definitely
Fine.
consider it.
okay, great. All right, so I don't have any issue with this. Like not increasing the nonconformity. I agree with your Theo, with your infiltration condition. And other than that, I don't have much to say. Anyone else?
I guess it's a little unclear from the narrative. I think there might be a word missing, or maybe it is just grammatically hard to follow. It does go over the 50%
Yes.
increase and go for it. Okay. And
Yes.
and do we have a sense of the other houses around, being of a similar size to the proposed square footage and or being on non-conforming lots?
This is a street, this is a street it's been in transition for quite a while, but really there's a lot of, the houses have gotten considerably bigger on that street over the period of time. A lot of renovations, a lot of new homes. I think this is probably, I think the neighbors' comments are probably right. I think this is very much in keeping with sort of the kinds of developments you see on in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what it looks like from the sort of satellite view, but just wanted a little more color on that. Thank you.
That being said, I'll make a motion for the approval of a special permit under section 713, 715, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 1,119 square foot addition on an existing 1,761 square foot dwelling and construct a new 440 square foot detached garage that, when combined, is larger, is over 50% larger than the existing gross floor area on a non-conforming house and lot at 29 Laurel Street, parcel 0230, with our standard conditions, and then a condition that there is some improvement to the infiltration, stormwater infiltration will be added. And the findings that it's in harmony with the neighborhood and it meets the general conditions of 11.6.
Second.
Great, Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 118 Belknap Street.
And I'm here for that as well.
Yeah, hi, Lisa. You're not getting out that easily. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so 118 Belknap is a single family house. It was built in 1894. It is 2 stories with finished attic space, and there is a shed on the property. Do we have the existing? There we go. So there is quite a large shed on the property, and the project is in residence. This house is in residence C. So the shed is going to be removed, and we are putting an addition. We can look at the proposed, putting addition over in the back of the house, and to add a new room and to add a 3rd bedroom on the 2nd floor, and then a side porch on the left. So the addition, maybe we could look at the plans, is, the idea was to have it really in keeping with the look of the house. So in essence, when you look at this project, the property now, I feel as if it really does go more. We're going to match all the very nice detail on the house that you can see from these drawings, and maybe the next set. So by removing the shed, it's actually going to look like a more comprehensive project. But anyway, we're before you for a special permit because this is a very small lot, and this is non-conforming in both the lot and also the house with the setbacks. And So this special permit is actually because we are not going to increase the nonconformity, but we are going within the allowable setbacks. So in terms of the FAR, we're fine with the FAR. The FAR on this lot is 2501. And we are going to, our proposed FAR, as you can see from my sheet, is 2477. So close, but we're still under the allowable FAR. The additions, we are not over the 50% rule on this house, because the proposed additions are only 522, and we are taking off 192 with the shed. So, but the setbacks, as you can see on this thing, right now the closest is 3.8, and our closest is we're going to 6.4. And then in the front, the closest is 14.9, and the proposed landing is at 15. You see, he went to 13.1, but that's the steps don't count because they're allowed to go within, kind of come in within the setback. But the landing is at 15. So those, and that's a landing without a roof. It's just an extension of the porch, but just a landing, no covering. So those are the special permit is for those two issues. We are below the FAR, like I said, and we are not going over the 50%. We are adding less than the 50% of the existing square footage on that. Just 2 points. The bulkhead is shown in the back, and that is allowed to go closer into the setback. So we've put it back there because, you know, the public space is on the left side, and we wanted to add it onto the new foundation just because it was, you know, just an easier build. It is behind a fence, so we feel as if people on Belknap Court would not be able to see that, so because there's quite a high, you know, 6-foot fence that goes around that side. And then just to also let you know, there's been some concern on Belknap Court, and oh no, those are the other photos. Those are Laurel Street. Yeah, there you go. About access vehicles, and really we just want to state that all the construction will be from the front of, you know, from Anne, from the owner's property. Will not be using Belknap Court for any access. So that's the fence that kind of runs along the road back there. So the addition, really, like what you see here, it's going to be pulled out to cover kind of what that existing single story. It's going to now become 2-story, but it's going to look the same. The details are all going to follow. So in this front will look the same, and it's only the landing. They have to fix the porch. The porch concrete floor on the right side is all really deteriorating. So that's going to be replaced with wood, and then the idea is just to connect the landing to the front one, but the roofs are going to stay the same. None of the roofs are going to extend further than they are.
Can you point me to the bulkhead, the section of the bylaw, which I wasn't able to find, but I'm hoping it's there, that says that you can build closer into the setbacks, or you can build further into the setbacks for the bulkhead?
Yeah, Elizabeth, do you have that? I don't have that in front of me, but that, I mean, I've done it so many times. I mean, it's kind of considered like uncovered stairs. They can both go into setbacks, bulkheads and uncovered stairs. So.
Okay. Elizabeth looks like she's searching for that. While she's doing that, were there other questions from the board?
Yeah, I'm just trying to confirm. So there's just street parking for this house, right?
No, there are 2 off-street parking on the left side. If you,
Okay, I'm having a hard time figuring that out, even looking at the plan. So you can.
maybe this site, yeah.
I was looking at the pictures. I was looking at the plans. I just wasn't sure I was seeing
Yeah,
it either place. So.
it's on the left side. You can't really, they pull over on the left side here.
On the left side,
Yeah, right, the
over
left
in there
side.
somewhere.
Yes. There's no parking on this side. It's all there. Yeah. But there is.
And is there a driveway cut someplace? I mean, okay, that's fine. That's Laurel Street again. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, they do have two places. They do have two off-street parking.
You need a K in Belknap. Wherever,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Google Street View shows it
There
there
you go.
too.
What's the address again?
118,
118.
right down at the bottom. Ann Bauer is the owner. So yeah, so you can see that shed is quite a big structure there. That'll be.
Oh, Jim, to your point, where are we seeing parking? Oh, that little,
Just-
Just that little part off there. It's, yeah, it's not paved. They just pull up. But that's where her car is all the time.
So while we're there, so the sort of paving that's on the right of 118, that's part of Belknap Court, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And so could somebody just point out Belknap Court for me? I know I've been there, but so that's the paving in and that's the houses are in the back there, so to
Yes, there's
speak.
3 houses that are associated with Belknap Court, 114, and then the 2 in the back. 60, yeah, parcel 114 there, 16, and then 22.
Elizabeth, any luck on that bulkhead issue?
Yeah, I should have got my glasses down. Sorry. I think the section she's referring to is. Where is it? Side yard shall be measured from the nearest point of any dwelling or structure to each side lot line, provided that nothing shall prevent the projection of uncovered steps and ramps or the construction of walls and fences.
So that doesn't exactly get us to bulkheads, right?
I mean, Ray, the building inspectors have always interpreted bulkheads as uncovered stairs. So,
Okay. Other comments?
And so the reason, it looks like there's an existing bulkhead on the right of the property, is that correct?
yes, there's an existing bulkhead here, but it's very old, and this is a very old foundation. So the thought is that that bulkhead is just going to be accessed from that basement. There's a very good chance we won't be able to break through the old foundation wall.
Oh, I see.
So the idea was to have another one. She doesn't have, because we don't have, you know, a shed now or anything. It's going to be kind of to go down and keep garden stuff and bikes and things like that.
And the reason not to put it sort of towards where the old shed was is because the space there is supposed to be.
Exactly. I mean, she's trying to really create like a really nice garden space back there.
Mm.
I mean, if that was going to be a huge holdup that, you know, this wasn't going to be approved except to move the bulkhead. I mean, you know, it's not, we would move the bulkhead, but we feel like it's really out of the way there, especially with the fence. And, you know, it'll be pretty low. I mean, I don't think it's an eyesore back there, but.
Anything else from the board? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up to public comment. The first person I saw was Diane Harwood. If you could unmute and.
Hi, I'm here with Marianne Moscato, and who also lives on Belknap Court. I'm Diane Harwood, and
If you could just say your address and when you introduce.
sure. I'm Diane Harwood at 16 Belknap Court. This is Marianne Moscato at 22 Belknap Court. we want, basically, we don't have a problem with Anne doing the addition. What we really have a problem with, and causes a great deal of concern, is the idea that either Belknap Court could get used, but that a bulkhead is going to be put right across from where Tom parks. And the only way, she's going to have to walk on Belknap Court. It basically gives her deeded rights. In a way, it implicitly implies deeded rights to a bulkhead. And I think Mary Ann would also like to speak. And
hello, I've lived on Belknap Court since I was a child, and I am now handicapped. I am 82 years old, and no, 83, excuse me. And I have people who come in from Emerson Hospital to help take care of me. The driveway is very small, and I can't have emergency. I've had 2 emergencies that they haven't been able to get in here because of the driveway and the curve. I just want to see that I am safe, and I have no problem with what Ann wants to do to her home, but I do have a problem with the fences being cut into the yard on the driveway. And as far as the right of way is a private driveway. It's been that way since I was a child. That's all I'm concerned and worried about. Plus neighbors and a fire. If there was ever a fire, forget it. So that's all I have to say about it.
did you want to say something about the fence that you said earlier?
The what?
The white fence out front?
Oh, and then the other thing is, my only thought was why Ann can't take down that white fence in the front of her house, which is a decoration now, and then put it up afterwards.
Well, no, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to access all construction.
Is Ann on here?
No, this is.
The lead architect.
She is on here. She's listening.
Yes, yes.
Is that what you're gonna do?
Yes, yes, we are going
All
to,
right,
yes, exactly.
because nothing has been said about that.
Well, no,
That
I
was
meant-
my main concern too, is why can't they take that down and do the construction from there?
There'll be
Also,
no construction from Belknap Court. No trucks down
Okay.
there, no construction.
But
That
how would they
back will not
build
be
the
removed.
bulkhead without doing construction from Belknap Court?
Because the bulkheads just go in, they're prefabbed. They can be put in from the side. I mean, that's not.
But
that's-
when she accesses it, how will she be able to access the bulkhead?
So you need to direct your questions to the board.
And
I'm
I
sorry.
was gonna actually ask this, Elise, if you do want to respond to that, how will the bulkhead be accessed if not? I mean, that fence is gonna remain up on Belknap Court. So how will the bulkhead be accessed when it's being used?
Well, there's still a couple of feet, bulkheads, the one shown is much too big. They're only 5 feet. We'll still be able to open the doors and come in on the sides.
I don't think there's 5 feet there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let me,
Obviously-
no, thank you. Go ahead, Elise. Did you have something else?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the fence is not gonna come down. So don't worry, it's not gonna be, we are not gonna take that fence down in the back. We're gonna take the fence down in the front to access the construction.
Okay. Let me move on, see if there are other comments. Other comments?
I think Jim Tavner
Jim,
and Tom
yep.
Harwood.
Yep, I got it. Thanks. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Jim Tabner. I'm representing Diane Harwood and Tom Harwood. And I do just want to make a couple comments here. One is that the plot plan indicates the address of the property as 118 Belknap Court. And I believe the correct address is 118 Belknap Street. I think that this property doesn't have any rights to Belknap Court, and the plan that was submitted says the address is Belknap Court. That is not accurate.
Sorry, where are you seeing that? I'm looking in the application. I see.
Yeah, it's on a plot plan and the title block.
And it's plan on the title block.
Yeah, the plot plan that was just shown,
Oh, okay.
it incorrectly states the address as Belknap Court.
Correct. I see that now.
So I don't want the members to think that this property is in any way associated or has any rights in Belknap Court.
I think we are all aware, we all read the maintenance and improvement agreement. So I think that is clear to us, but that's true that plot plan it's listed incorrectly.
Yeah, that'll have to be corrected.
Yep.
And as has been pointed out by Diane Harwood and others, Belknap Court, there is an agreement. I think you said you saw the agreement.
Yes.
And I think the residents of Belknap Court are concerned that that agreement is going to be violated. So if this is approved, they are requesting a condition of the special permit be that no vehicles or construction workers use Belknap Court to access the construction site.
Understood.
Yeah, understood. That's absolutely
okay.
fine.
And the bulkhead, I think has already been raised. If the fence is going to stay there, the plan is showing 1.7 feet. It just seems kind of, it doesn't seem practical to have a bulkhead in that location with 1.7 feet with a 6 or 8 foot fence. I don't know how that would be accessed without going through Belknap Court.
Okay. All right, noted. Let me take other comments and then
Thank you.
we'll address that. Thank you. Tom Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'd just like to raise a couple of quick points.
All right, can you just introduce yourself and give your address?
Right. I'm Tom Harwood. I live at 16 Belknap Court, so I am in a butter of Ms. Bowers. The first point I would like to make is just to draw the board's attention to a photograph, which is.
He just got muted.
Sorry. Can you, sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. I was just referencing a photograph which I took after we wrote our letter. It's titled 118 Belknap Street, a butter submission, Harwood 62321. And that is an overhead shot of Belknap Court from our 3rd floor, which I thought would give the board an idea of just how tight the spaces are back here. And since the fence has been raised, I'd have you take a look at that fence and the distance from the fence to the Belknap Court pavement. That looks like it's already onto Belknap Court. The second issue I'd like to raise has to do with why that driveway maintenance agreement exists. That was required by our mortgager, I believe, to conform to a Sallie Mae requirement. And that's why we have gone to the expense and the trouble of writing all these letters and hiring Attorney Tabner to represent us, because these are not just abstract issues of rights and responsibilities to us. These are real issues that affect our ability to use our property and potentially to be able to sell it. So we feel a bit backed into a corner by the current situation, but that can easily be remedied by moving that bulkhead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne, I see you, but let me see if there's any other comments from someone who's not the applicant, and then I will come back to you. I don't see anyone. So Ann Bauer, if you wanted to go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to speak to Mary Ann's comment about the white fence. Mary Ann, you and I talked about that. That's what we talked about. We didn't talk about the other fence. Sorry. That fence will be taken out. That fence will be gone. The white fence will be gone, as I had said to you. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any other public comment before I close this? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Well, the issues seem pretty clear to me. I don't think anyone on the board, I will just speak for us, intends or thinks that we can grant rights in this private way to the applicant. So I'm fine conditioning this on nothing happens on Belknap Court, but I'm not even sure we need to do that, but I'm happy to do it. In terms of the bulkhead, it does seem a little unwieldy to me where it's located. I'm curious what other people on the board think.
Yeah, I mean, I
is it-
had that thought even before seeing the public letters that came in. I'll just add, I'm wondering if it kind of shifted over and was still off the back of the house, but was, further over to the left side of the plot plan where you have a little more space to the property line, if that, mitigates the neighbors' concerns and helps keep the side yard open too.
If it shifts a little bit, so where it says existing overhang. Is that-
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're willing to move the bulkhead to the other side and keep it down to the far left if it really will help the neighborhood harmony, if that's such a sticking point.
It,
I mean-
it sounds like it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
so-
exactly. Yeah,
all right.
so that's
So it'll be moved back over to
on
off
the
the
left side.
office.
Can we get a picture up here so people can,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd just be useful
Absolutely.
to show it on a screen.
Yeah, so we can move it to that side. Yes, right to that end, right there, exactly. If that would,
It
make
it
everyone
sounds like that, along with, obviously, there's not going to be any construction or parking, anything at all on Belknap Court
no,
by the applicant, then that sounds like we've addressed the neighbors' issues. Let me ask the board, are there other issues with the application that you want to address?
Let me just, I don't know that it's necessarily the application because I don't know that it's come up, but it does seem to me that it's probably in the interests of the property owner here to consider taking a look at some sort of a surveyor, or to have a surveyor take a look at whether the existing fence is actually in the property, in the property of 118 Belknap. So I just, I sort of, if you look at this, which is supposedly the proposed plot plan, it would seem that the fence should be well off the road. The photos would suggest it's kind of right on the road. It just seems to me that, again, given everything else that's going on here, you'd like to know that that fence is in the right place before you get into a lot of construction.
So Jim, I will point out that in no way does this dashed line is that a surveyed location?
That's my point. My
So,
point
I
is
mean-
that somebody ought to, I think that what we're looking at here is a development that probably is almost assuredly in keeping with the neighborhood. It's almost assuredly an appropriate development, but for the fact that there is concern by, and I think legitimate concern by neighbors that this private way that is Belknap Court is properly respected, both during the construction and by the, by the basic issues. So I just think that the bulkhead's a good idea to move that if it can be moved. I'm just making a suggestion that it makes sense for somebody to go ahead and survey that fence. I'm not even necessarily suggesting it gets on the condition here, but I just think that it's a good time to think about making a survey to make sure that the fence is appropriately in the property line. That's all.
no, I agree. I think you're right.
I
Has
have
been-
one other kind of point about the
Go ahead, Robbie.
fence,
Yeah, go Robbie.
which is, the other sort of thing I'm hearing is because the fence is there, that would stop anybody from, bringing a sofa up the bulkhead and, having it back into Belknap Court to get it out of the basement. I don't, we sometimes will have conditions on, landscape screening and fencing for other reasons. I don't know if makes sense to have a condition that you need to have a fence on the back line where the bulkhead is projecting, just to take care of that concern that somebody might walk up the steps and just cross the line onto the court.
Well, there is a fence now.
Right. So you could, but there's no requirement that you keep the fence there.
Oh, I see.
No,
Right.
but I think they've already agreed to relocate the bulkhead to the side.
Yeah,
And keep.
But I think Robbie's saying that if even the bulkhead's at the side, if somebody was delivering something theoretically, and there wasn't a fence, the delivery truck would say, well, why don't I just drive up Belknap Court and drop the thing off and put it in the, if the fence is there, they're not going to do it because they can't get around the fence. So,
yeah.
so I
Well,
I mean,
you
how
know,
far does it
everybody
go
thinks there's
that-
always going to be a fence there, assuming it's in the property. Would it make sense?
I mean,
to
there's no
con-
legal right for them to use Belknap Court, so I mean, I
True,
guess we could
yeah.
say put a fence there, but is that gonna stop them taking the fence down? And then what's the, you know,
Yeah, just a thought.
I see the point. I'm just not sure in practicality it really will make a difference.
That's fair. And that's all I had.
All right, anything else from the board? So I agree. I think, Jim, you said it. There otherwise seems in keeping with the neighborhood. Issues with anyone want to go ahead and do findings or make a motion or add anything else?
looking for the agenda.
Do we need an updated plot plan, Elizabeth? Or
Yeah, so there, at this point, besides the board's standard conditions, you know, for special permits, there's 4 additional conditions, one being the no parking or construction activity from Belknap Court, the infiltration drip edge around you know, the appropriate areas around the house, relocating the bulkhead from the rear to the left side, and amending the address on the plot plan, which would be prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Great.
was the drip edge for Laurel Street or?
We're doing it sort of all the way through.
Okay.
It's our
Thank
new
you.
thing. Good job, Theo.
It's
All right,
it's the Theo plan. We're gonna name it after the Theo
Yeah.
condition.
We've had enough flooding over the last few days, so.
True. All right, can I get a motion?
Yeah, we'll move the grant a special permit to Ann Bauer under section 713 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 328 square foot addition on an existing 2146 square foot dwelling, a non-conforming house and lot at 18118 Belknap Street, emphasis on street, with the 4 conditions that Elizabeth indicated, including correction of the name of the street on the plot plan, the infiltration drip system, the movement of the or the relocation of the bulkhead, and then, most importantly, the conditions that Belknap Court not be used for any construction, parking of vehicles, et cetera, with respect to this particular property. And then otherwise that with those conditions, we think that it's in keeping with the neighborhood. And I would have to say, I think moving the shed is actually a very good thing with respect to this. So I do think it's a pretty modest and thoughtful change in the property.
Second.
Great, Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore, aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. All right, moving on. 7:15 p.m. Charles Audi. Paul, are you presenting?
Hello. Yes,
Hello,
I'm here
Paul.
with Charlie. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Great. Good to see you. Thanks, everybody. Charlie's here somewhere. I think he might be on his phone.
I see I am from Charlie Audi. So I
Yep.
see-
So he may have some things he wants to add in as well.
Okay.
So this is a special permit request for Concord Gas at 686 Elm Street. And this property we've done many special permits over the years for various requests that were approved. I don't think any of those of you on the board now were around then, but they primarily were done between 2011 and 2015. And they were for various iterations of converting the existing service bays to retail. And we had different requests in different ways. All of those included an addition to the building that was at the left side of that building that says existing building. It was a 14-foot addition. That's no longer part of the request, but that was always previously part of the request. And so point being is that we went before this board in 2014 for essentially the same request, and it was approved at that time. And we're asking essentially for the same thing again, but a smaller version of that. So if you look at the floor plan, you can see on the left, that's the existing floor plan. There's 2 service bays in the middle. There's a car wash at the right. There's various storage elements at the rear right and the rear left. And then there's the existing retail area, bottom left, and then some associated bathrooms and office space. So the plan at the right shows the same footprint. The car wash remains, the storage at the rear remains. All of the service bays are now converted to a retail use, as well as the existing retail area. And then we have 2 new accessible bathrooms at the rear left. And so that's the proposed layout. We've got a small 5-foot addition at the front of the existing car wash that we're including in this request, and a small overhang that happens at where the new double door is shown at the entry. But essentially the request is for converting the service bays to retail. And if you see the elevations, you can see how that changes a little bit. So if you skim down just a little bit more, there you go. So you can see the front elevation on the right side. The top would be the proposed and the bottom is the existing. So we're just going to convert those 2 large overhead doors to storefront glass. And then you can see on the left side, we're just kind of cleaning up that elevation a little bit. The bottom left is existing. It's sort of a variety of glass and wood infill. And we're just going to kind of clean that up on the top left. So it's just a nicer composition of storefront. So as far as the site plan goes, there's no real change to the site plan. There's currently 18 parking spaces existing, and that is as part of the service bay operation. And converting this to retail would actually require us to have 1 less parking space. So it'd have 17 instead of 18. I think that's kind of the big picture on what we're proposing to do here. This is in the limited business district 1. So there's a series of those limited business districts in Concord, and they all have their specific requirements, and service stations are allowed in these areas, and accessory uses to the service stations can include retail space. What you couldn't do on this site plan is build like a retail plaza. That wouldn't be allowed. But as long as it's accessory to the principal use of a service station, it is allowed. And that's how it has always been presented in the past, and that's how it's always been. And that's how it's always been approved.
Okay.
And Charlie, if you need him to speak to the financials at all of why, the gas sales are far in excess of the retail sales, he can do that. But that's everything I have to present.
Was there, I know there was an application, was there a liquor license granted for this?
There was not.
It was not, okay. Elizabeth, I know that Ray is not here, but that parking analysis, just want to make sure that that is correct.
I have not done a parking analysis, so I can't speak to that. But while you continue your discussion, I can just take a quick look at the requirements and may be able to help out with that.
Okay.
The only other thing is that there were, from the previous special permit, which was emailed to the board, there were other conditions placed on the application to address certain issues. So I don't know if the board wanted to go over those. I can bring up that special permit as well if you want.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I know you sent that out this afternoon. I'm not sure if everyone got a chance to look at it, but was that, sorry, the 2015 decision that, or the 2000?
I think it was 2014.
14 was the one that was most closely aligned with this.
Yeah, so it was.
You make that any bigger?
Yep.
Okay, good.
So I think the difference, Paul, correct me, in 14, the retail area was going to be slightly smaller because there was going to be a detailing area.
Let me look.
Yes, there was a third garage bay that was converted to detailing.
That was part of one request, and I'm not sure it was that years.
Yes, it is a 2014.
Yeah.
So the conditions deal with compliance with Title V prior to the issuance of a building permit, and requirements from water sewer if any of the existing water service or water meters need to be upgraded, that those prior to the issuance of a building permit, that those be investigated. And then if they are found that upgrades are required, they would need to be done prior to the issuance of occupancy permit. The as-built requirement is a standard condition for the board. I'm not sure. Typically, all the planning board recommendations get included. So I believe that had to deal with retaining the service station as the principal use, selling of gasoline, other auto related products, the car wash. And then Mr. Audi does have a permit and license from the select board for auto sales up to 5 vehicles. And condition 9 dealing with, again, that retail operations shall be subordinate, and and the retail goods. So you're not going to all of a sudden see them selling shoes and other other items. And I believe, Paul, correct me, the handicap parking space was already relocated to where
I think
to where
if
it
you,
currently is. The
different
difference
garage.
being in 2015, there was a requirement. Well, I thought there was a requirement. Where did I see it? Maybe it was 14. That a crosswalk.
I think it's 2014. So let's see. Striped pathway should be painted.
Yes,
From the
that's
head.
it.
It's 5.
Oh, yep, number 5.
Yep.
So that those would be the additional conditions that I would suggest the board.
But 5 has been done, I assume, or not? A striped pathway. Oh, they never did any construction. No. Okay. So a striped pathway should be painted from the handicapped accessible parking space to the handicap ramp / sidewalk, providing access into the building. Okay. Okay.
Elizabeth, I have a question. It's
Yes,
Tom.
Tom, go ahead.
Does the applicant have a gross estimate of the ratio between the retail operation and the gasoline operation? I have some background in this based on my prior life, and most of the gas stations I represented wanted to increase their retail component because the profits were greater, etc. And here it needs to be an accessory use. I'm just curious, what's the kind of gross estimate of the ratio between sales of retail and sales of gasoline?
Paul or Charlie, you want to answer that?
That's more of Charlie's area than mine.
The retail, probably it's gonna be around 35 to 40%. And the gasoline and the car wash gonna be 65.
So the board may want to consider, although I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but the board may want to consider a condition that the applicant would certify every 2 or 3 years to the building inspector that the retail sales have not exceeded, say, 45% or 40%, because you don't want to get the retail to be greater than the gasoline sales.
I have great experience in this, and I completely buy that the gas will greatly outpace the retail sales. But
Well, sure, because
yeah,
I wouldn't.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's not-
wouldn't
I don't
trust
have an issue with it, but I'm trying to think how onerous. Sorry, in my head, I'm trying to think how onerous it would be to certify that, or if we need to certify it. Frankly, I'm surprised that you're taking away the service bays and putting in retail. So, I would like to have service bays, but Jim or Robbie or Theo, any thoughts on that? It doesn't bug me enormously, but
Well, I think the zoning use is it has to be an accessory use, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the operating thing? So the only question is not whether if there was a concern that perhaps the retail was outstripping the gasoline use, you'd have the right to make inquiry and to get information at that time as part of the special permit process and the building inspector's role in managing such things. So I don't know that we necessarily need a certification every couple of years, just as a reminder that we have, but we do have a condition in there that it be operated in that way. So
yeah, and then we have the right to go in and ask if we have a question about it. Tom, would that get you to that?
No, that's fine. No.
Okay. So just not a time limit on it. Just
Yeah, I think as a practical matter, we would be highly unlikely anyone's going to go in and ask to look at the financials to certify it.
right.
So I
Just
think
making
once
it
you,
a condition, reiterating it as a condition because it is a
Yeah.
condition anyway.
but
For
I think it's going to be tough to enforce. Not sure it'd ever be a problem, but I just raise it because
yeah,
there are concerns that sometimes the retail operation of these facilities, not this one in particular, but gasolines generally, can begin to overtake the gasoline aspect of the business.
yeah, one thing here though, right, is that I think that the car wash is actually counted on the gasoline side. Is that right? Yeah, so I mean that's another factor in
Yes,
this, is
agreed.
that one of your major cost centers for the business is actually in addition to the gasoline sales.
and maybe I'd be more worried if it were a liquor store. Oh, if they had a liquor license, that it would essentially become a liquor store. But it sounds like that isn't happening. So, other comments? All right, let me go ahead and open up to public comment. Anyone? I do not see anything. Elizabeth, did you have a chance to do a quick parking analysis?
No,
Can-
my
I can-
ADD
I can
my
shed a little
ADD
light on
got
that
in the
if you
way,
like.
sorry.
I
Oh,
can
go
give you
ahead. Somebody should.
my summary if you want.
Sure, Paul.
Which is that retail stores require 1 space per 250 gross square feet. And we have 3,002 gross square feet divided by 250. It's basically 4 spaces for every 1,000. And so I'm coming up with 12.
Yes, and so a auto service station and auto body shop is 3 spaces per lubrication or repair bay,
Right.
excluding plus 1 space per employee on the largest shift, plus 1 space per company vehicle kept on the property.
That's correct for when it's operating as a repair shop. And that's how we
Yes.
did the calculations previously to come up
And-
with 18.
And then there's additional and I also believe that there was one space for each used car,
Correct. 5
which
of
would be
those.
5.
Yep.
Okay,
So
so
it's got-
now,
That's how we
you're-
got,
And
got
then,
12.
and then there'd be whatever the calculation is for the current area devoted to retail.
okay, so let's break that. So I guess what you need for what you're going to have, it's
Exactly.
five spaces for the used cars,
Correct.
4 spaces per 1,000 of retail use. so
Correct.
that's 12, and that's how you're getting
Correct.
17, and then
Correct.
the employees on the largest
It
shift.
does, now that relates to when it's a service shop. Then
Okay.
you need a certain number of spaces per bay plus a space for the employee working in that bay.
And the car wash does not count as
Right,
service.
there's no employee for that. So when you have retail, the parking count goes by square footage, but I didn't see anything, I might be wrong, but I didn't see anything in there saying plus so many spaces for so many workers.
No, but, it's not an issue. I mean, there's 18, Paul's calculation is 17. And I would say that under an auto, this is still an auto service station. While it does not have repair bays, one space, there's usually only one employee on the largest shift. So
Right.
you're still at 18. So I don't think there is a parking issue.
Right, I would agree.
Right. And we haven't had any complaints about anything on the site that anyone is aware of. Okay. Other comments from the board? I would say we've approved essentially this before, going with the findings that were made in the past, the conditions that Elizabeth pointed out. I'm comfortable with this. Open other comments.
Well, my only other comment is just to make sure that with all of these other permits, I think some of them have expired probably and others are other things, but if we could sort of figure out if there's a helpful way that we could clear up the record to make sure that this is the only permit or at least make a finding that all the other permits are expired or
Yeah.
will be whatever by this, I just to make that clear.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So I'm sure others can correct me, but I think there can just be a statement in the permit that this special permit is not an amendment. It is slightly different. So this can be a new special permit. All previous special permits are superseded by this
Perfect.
special permit.
Perfect.
As long as there's no other special permit that needs to still be there, but there isn't, right? Okay. I'm just trying to think if there are any unintended consequences to that statement.
I don't believe there's any other special permits on the property.
Okay, great. Any other comments from the board, or can I get a motion?
I'm gonna do a so moved on this one. We've got a lot that we've talked about, but I just don't.
And I
You
second
know,
that.
Yeah, I move to grant the special permit with all the conditions that we listed. And I think we can just go back to the record
Great.
and list those out.
And I heard a second. So, Mr. Smith,
All right,
Mr. Kindermans, Ms. Akers Moore, aye. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
See you when you come back to amend this one. No, I'm kidding. This is it, right?
See you in a year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
I'll be right back.
Theo's coming back. I'm going to give him 1 minute, but we're going to go ahead. 7:20, Symes Development. I have no idea where Theo went, so. Maybe we get started slowly. Jeff, if you want to ease us in.
No, you should just pause and wait
can
for.
I ask a question, Elizabeth, while we're waiting
Yeah,
for Theo anyway? So do we have I mean, with both this and the next ones, they're ones that have been going on for quite a while. There's lots of moving a lot of moving pieces. I'm wondering if the chair has a theory about how we're proceeding tonight with this application and trying to get through this as expeditiously as reasonable and still let everyone have a chance to speak.
Absolutely.
And I think she's gonna wait till Theo gets back since he is a voting member.
So first I thought I would
Okay.
wait until Theo gets back.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
I did it. I timed it
Yay.
perfectly.
Hello. So the question was asked by Jim, how we're going to proceed with these next two very complicated and lengthy applications that we've gotten a lot of information about. What I would like to see happen with this, it's for at least this next Main Street one, is we kind of go over where we are with the consultants and the applicant's responses and the consultant's responses to the applicant. Let's open up to public comment, and then let's close public comment, see if there's other information that the board wants to gather in order, whether outside of here or inside of here, or whether Elizabeth goes to other staff members and comes back to us so that in August we can deliberate to come to a decision. That's how I see that going. Jim, I'm willing to.
That sounds good to me. I just think that this is one of those situations, and particularly with a lot of letters, which I've tried to read all of them, I think, at this stage, as well as a lot of back and forth between the applicant and our consultants, and then the applicant's response to consultants, and then whatever presentations we have tonight. I just feel like it's one of those things where it would be very difficult to try to take all of that in and then make a decision tonight, as opposed to having an opportunity to think about it and deliberate at the next meeting. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Perfect. So the goal, so if we can go ahead with that, and then we'll take the next one as it comes, if that's all right. Similarly, I think we have some things we need answered with that one. But that being said, if we want to go ahead with signs, and Jeff, so where we're headed with this is kind of, let's get an update where we are, see what additional information the board needs, and open, and then hear public comment and close public comment so we can deliberate in August.
Sure.
Okay.
We put together a short presentation that sort of consolidates all the information, that's pertinent. So I don't think it'll take us more than 10 to 15 minutes to get through it. One suggestion, when you do open up to public comment, you'll save a lot of time if you restrict it to the zoning. There's a lot of commentary on emissions.
Understood. I understand your point.
Okay, so
we'll do what we can do.
I will start then. I'm Jeff Ruder with Signs Development and Permitting LLC. With me tonight is Josh Latham, our attorney, Rich Williams, our project engineer from Williams and Sparages, and AJ Pittarino from Patriot Excavating Corporation. AJ's company would be doing the site work and trucking for the subject site. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I don't goof this up.
Maybe I should also mention, Jeff, that our consultant is also here, Lindsay.
Yep.
Okay, it's just so you know,
So the first thing I'm going to bring up is the latest letter from GPI. Now, at the last hearing, this board requested an outside peer review. An initial review was issued by GPI on June 3rd. Rich Williams responded to GPI on June 23rd. And then verbally, Lindsay and Rich communicated several times, either electronically or by phone. So this letter from your consultant is the most recent. We satisfied all the questions and agreed with most of their suggestions. Now, does the board want to go through this item by item, or does it want to stand on its own?
Let me throw that to the board, Theo.
No, I think was Jeff trying to share his screen?
I didn't share.
No, you didn't.
No, we haven't.
So I think if it is the board's consultant's letter, the board should have their consultant go through their letter.
So this isn't showing up, huh?
I am not opposed to that, but no, nothing is showing up.
What am I
Um,
doing wrong?
Did
So-
you have permission to share your screen? Is that?
So I can bring up the letter and then,
I should be able to share this, Elizabeth. What's going on?
I don't know, I'm not the Zoom coordinator. I'm sure Heather's looking into this. But
In the meantime, I mean, it's the same letter we're looking at, right? So Elizabeth, you want to bring up the most recent?
sure.
For the board, do you think it makes sense to have Jeff walk through it, or would you like our consultant to walk through it?
I think. our
Well, I
consultant
think if I've read the letter thoroughly, so I don't know if I need it at all, but I think if we're gonna have it, we ought to have the consultant just walk
All
through
right.
it very quickly.
Yeah, let's have Jeff, if you can indulge us in that, if we can have Lindsay, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, great. Hi. Can you just take us through briefly the points? Great.
I will go through just a summary. And if you want to scroll, thank you. So we, GPI, as well as our subconsultant, Nobis, who is a geotechnical engineer, who Kurt Jelinek from Nobis is here as well, performed a peer review of the documents and the narratives and everything submitted by the applicant. We prepared the first peer review letter based on our this review, and then we've gone back and forth as mentioned to get to the point of the second letter, which kind of closes the loop on most of the comments. We looked primarily at, based on the bylaw, looking to determine if we feel that the design as submitted and previously approved really was considerate of the practical minimum removal of earth to accomplish that design and construction. We also looked at geotechnical and hydrogeological considerations and included that in our letter. So stepping through this, I'll go through a couple of the first comments, and then I'll give Kurt a chance to talk about his specific geotechnical comments. So the first two comments here, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, looked at considering, let's see, make sure is this our first letter here? No, this is our second letter, right? So we had a comment regarding potential reuse of materials. We wanted to make sure the applicant had considered reuse of materials to the maximum extent possible in order to minimize the earth removal and the export. So we considered possibilities, and ultimately the applicant stated that they are intending to reuse the materials on site to the extent practical. But there's an understanding on both of our parts that you may not know if all materials are available to be reused in place of import materials that they would have to bring in. So these first two comments discuss reuse of materials, and it seems that the applicant has agreed that they would reuse materials to the extent that they can. And our recommendation is a condition that basically requires construction supervision and materials testing to try to maximize the amount of reuse possible if the materials meet the requirements of import material that would otherwise have to be brought in after material is exported. The applicant also provided an earthwork quantity, a summary, I will say. We didn't perform a detailed earthwork quantity analysis to quantify, based on their plans to come up and confirm their number is correct, but they did submit their takeoff numbers, how they arrived to those numbers that are in the application, and those did show us that they did assume some reuse of the materials in cuts and fills, as well as some reuse of topsoil, which was part of our comment. So those are the first two comments. We had no further comment after their response, but we did have conditions regarding material testing and supervision from a third party to kind of make sure that's happening to the maximum extent possible. Scrolling down a design review, I think an important piece of our review was in looking to see if the applicant's design really did consider the minimum removals possible. And in looking initially at the plans, it sort of was readily apparent that some of the road profiles and the roadway profile designs, it seemed that they could balance the cuts and fills better to reduce the export from the site. Kind of an obvious one in a few cases that we said, why can't you do this? Besides that the road profile considerations and modifying that, the general design did seem to take into consideration those items that you could consider in order to minimize earth removal. Regarding the roadway profile designs and our suggestions on how they might be able to adjust those to minimize the earth removal, they came back and brought our attention to the building height requirement of the bylaw, which does limit some of their flexibility in additional fills to balance some of the cuts, because the building height requirement is based on the base elevation and the topography on site. So that sort of answered our question we asked for. Basically, show us why you can't make these changes to minimize the earth removal. And this is the comment that I discussed with the applicant's engineer, and he provided me a table of some of the constraints. We noted a couple errors, he corrected those and resubmitted those, and we reviewed and ultimately agree that they are constrained based on the building height requirement for several of the lots, and therefore the roadway profile grades would not be able to change in order to better balance the cuts and fills and minimize earth removal. So that's comments 4 and 5 there. Scrolling down, construction considerations. We had a few comments regarding the stormwater pollution prevention measures that are proposed. And generally, I thought their SWIP plan was, up to kind of industry standards, but as is typical for sites like this, things can change during construction, and there's a bit of means and methods in moving around. And therefore, we would suggest that the town hire somebody to oversee some of this to make sure it's sort of following standard practices. And, they've shown the measures that they would have available to them for use in controlling stormwater and dust control, runoff over exposed soils and things like that. But typically it comes down to what happens on site. So that was also a recommendation for a condition. Part B was the geotechnical review. And if you don't mind, if Kurt is on here from Nobis, I'm going to let him just step through his comments here.
Sure, good evening. My name is Kurt Jelinek. I cannot start the video here. It's not allowing me here to show me
That's okay.
this video. Okay. So I looked first at the soil conditions there on site based on the test pits that were done previously. And it looks like most of the deposits are glacial deposits, consisting mostly of sand and gravel. But then also I looked at the slope they proposed, and it looks like there are 2 horizontal to 1 vertical slope proposed. The height they proposed range from up to 24 feet from the bottom to the slope to the top. However, during construction, the slope height will be larger during construction of basements, but also septic systems. And they provide a recommendation, which is referred as geotechnical recommendation number 1, that the developer should hire a professional engineer to design these slopes, particularly also considering the temporary condition during construction. And they agreed to it. The next thing is I looked at the groundwater levels, and in the test pits that are completed already, it looks like that the existing groundwater is below all the proposed improvements. So underneath the proposed roadway level, underneath the proposed utilities, and also underneath the proposed cut sections. However, these test pits are sometimes not that accurate, and I think it would be reasonable to install or do 2 additional borings and install a monitoring observation well to make sure that the groundwater that is assumed here is actually where it is. And I provided some recommendation also how to install an observation well, where to install it, and also certain reading increments. I think it will protect everybody involved here, would protect the developer, the city, but also the abutters. So this is a kind of summarized in my recommendation number 2. I also provided some recommendation what I would do in areas where they install the retaining walls, and also to make sure that the raise in grade or the preparation, the subgrade below retaining walls, which is a provided recommendation number 3. I provided what typically done by a contractor, and also what kind of material to use. And the recommendation number 1 to 3 was accepted by the developer without any comments. The recommendation number 4 is my recommendation regarding raising grade fill. In certain area, they propose to raise the grade, I believe maybe 7 or 8 feet in that range. And that should be done in a certain way, in certain loose lift, and should be compact in a certain way. They're fairly detailed how it should be done, which is typically done in the construction industry. I think most of them were accepted by the contractor too. He just had one comment that it's not required by the zoning board, but it's maybe just a general guideline during construction. And I concur with that. So it's not something that maybe doesn't follow the law from the town, but it's general recommendation for construction. This is kind of a very quick summary. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I guess while we have you, any questions from the board on that? Oh, now we see you. Hi.
Yep.
I guess I'll say any initial questions, since there's obviously a lot to go into here, but.
Not yet. Not at this time.
Not for me.
Okay. Jeff, then, do you want to pick up where you were going to start?
Let's see if we can share. Can you see it this time?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. So we've already gone through. You're not going to go through the rest of the review letter?
Why don't we take it from where you are now that we've, did you want to go back? Oh, sorry, you mean after the,
No, I have, for the most part, from our perspective, we've agreed with most of their suggestions. They've found our practices and our design to be appropriate. And it's a board's consultant, it came out pretty good. So I don't know that there's any reason to review any more of it. We've complied with all their suggestions. Want me to move to the next slide?
yes, go ahead.
Okay. So we're just going to start with, I got to move. All the pictures are up on the side here. I got to figure out how to move them. Bear with me. Okay. So we're gonna start with the conditions under which the board can grant the permit. This is obviously directly out of your zoning. The volume proposed for removal does not exceed the minimum practical removal required to accomplish the construction, development, or improvement in accordance with the plans thereof. Therefore, I think you just heard Lindsay confirm that. I don't think we need to elaborate on that any longer. So we'll move on to the next one. The plans submitted in connection with the removal are designed to minimize changes in existing contours to enhance attractive land utilization, effective drainage, suitable road gradients, access, or other design consideration. So in designing the road grade, this is a letter from the Concord Fire Department. The fire department operates a ladder and truck, and the grade for the project should not exceed a 7 to 8% grade. In particular, the entrance into the subdivision. Anything greater would cause the truck to bottom out. There was a subsequent meeting to this letter where they requested us not to exceed 7%. So the approved road grade is actually at 6.8%. After doing that, this letter was sent by your fire department pertaining to the subdivision at 1440 Main Street. At this time, the developers met all our requirements and standards that were set forth. So suitable road gradients have been accomplished by conforming to your fire department's request and adhering to the subdivision rules and regulations with a waiverless plan. In terms of the stormwater, there's a 404-page report. I'm only going to show you the cover page. It was reviewed extensively by the town's engineering department, and changes were made until your engineering department was satisfied, and subsequently the planning board. The drainage is effective as approved. Next condition is affecting the removal will not be detrimental or injurious to abutters or the neighborhood, either by the alteration of existing topography or by a substantial change in the use of the streets in the neighborhood. This is a section of the approval from the planning board that's on record. I'm going to read it because there's some important information in this as it applies to this condition. Determination that the development at the proposed location does not entail unwarranted hazard to safety, health, and convenience of future residents of the development or of others because of possible traffic hazards or environmental degradation, or could be avoided or ameliorated through an alternative plan. Town staff has closely reviewed each iteration of the definitive subdivision plan. The Board of Health, the Natural Resources Commission, the Fire Department, CMLP, and CPW Engineering, Water and Sewer Divisions, among others, have reviewed the subdivision plans for issues of flooding, improper drainage, adverse topography, poor soils, bedrock, location of utility easements, and the measures the applicant has proposed to address these issues. The board finds that consistent with recommendations from town staff, this decision includes conditions that would limit harm to the safe, health, and general welfare of present and future residents of the subdivision and neighboring areas. So findings have already been done by by almost the entire town staff. We already went through these recommendations as the different safety measures that we agreed to. Not mentioned, where the slope is that the gentleman was just speaking of, we've highlighted in yellow. This abuts Center Village. These are all plantings, landscape plans that are a condition of our approval from the planning board. They're ground cover type plantings with fibrous root systems that will take care of any erosion as growth takes place. As other safety measures, this is the road as it comes out onto Main Street right here. This is a A&R lot, and this is an A&R lot. We agreed to create turning radiuses here and here. This will allow exiting trucks to go onto Route 62 without going into the opposite lane. So there's plenty of turning radiuses for safety measures. This is a letter that we filed back in February when we originally filed the application. On the letter are all of the conditions that we agreed to with the Concord Police Department. You want me to go through each one of these conditions, or do you feel you've already seen them all?
No, let's not go through all of them at the moment. Let's keep going and we may come back to it.
Okay. This is a typical trucking route. This would be going to 30 Stowe, which I always goof this up. Bear with me for 1 minute. Yeah, this is Lombardo, Loom, and Gravel. All of the travel through Concord is through Route 62 and then on to High Street in Acton. So approximately 4.1 miles. This is the route for 2352 Main Street. That is DH Loom. All of the travel is on Route 62. It's approximately 1.7 miles. This letter confirms an agreement that we have executed with DeMaximus. They are the general contractor for the Superfund site known as Nuclear Metals. As a Superfund site, they are exempt from this process for earth removal and importing. You'll note within the letter, they have to export 85,000 yards of contaminated or affected soil, they call it, and they have to import the same amount. This agreement will greatly reduce the overall trucking for the Nuclear Metals site and shorten ours. They're buying all of our export materials. Our export of gravel and loom is approximately 2,168 trailers. With this contract, 2,168 trailers will not have to travel from parts unknown, up or down Route 2, onto Route 62, driving by West Concord Center, the West Concord Library, Concord Carousel Preschool, Concord Children's Center, heading to Nuclear Metals. Instead, we are proposing a 1.5 mile transport distance for 70% of their fill requirement. For the emissions concerns, this will reduce the overall emissions of Nuclear Metals import activity, and all the travel will be along Route 62. This shows you the travel distance. This says 1.7 miles up top. It's actually 1.5 miles because it's counting the travel onto private property. But you can see the short distance commute. Again, all of our proposed trucking sites are all on Route 22. They're not on any neighborhood streets. They're on Route 62. This is a manual on uniform control devices and the standard municipal traffic code from Mass DOT. It's still in effect today. I'm going to highlight a particular section that's pertinent to this because we're not on a neighborhood street. We're on a state numbered route. Numbered routes are ineligible for heavy commercial vehicle exclusions. So what we're doing, you know, they do the state routes for commerce, and what we're doing on Route 62 is exactly what Mass DOT intends. That's all I got.
Thank you. Let me first ask the board what comments they have, questions, since we're gathering information to deliberate. And there must be some.
I don't have any. I mean, I've read it all. It's been quite a job reading everything that's coming in, but you know, well, last time we requested peer review with just pretty limited scope, and I think the peer review did exactly what we wanted them to do. I think they did a great job, and yeah, I think they provided some, you know, the answer. Well, one big answer that I was after was indeed is the export, you know, minimized to the greatest extent possible, and I think GPI agrees with that.
Okay, I mean, we need to discuss that a little bit because, and Elizabeth, I'm gonna need your help with this. I know we were in variance territory when we were dealing with the PRD. A waiver for height under the subdivision would just be a special permit, correct, Elizabeth?
So it's not a waiver of, the subdivision rules and regs have no bearing on this application. And the planning board subdivision decision has no bearing on this application. The planning board did not take into consideration any of the requirements or findings for an earth removal permit. The waiver for height is, it's a requirement in the zoning bylaw. And it is at the time when a building permit is requested, they have to show based on the base elevation from existing topography, that the height of the proposed dwelling meets the 35-foot height limit. So if somebody is cutting, significant amount, then yes, that's definitely gonna throw off that calculation. So there is a waiver provision within the zoning bylaw. And it deals with the literal enforcement of the bylaw. And, but that's on a lot by lot, individual lots for when the time for a building permit is requested.
So that speaks to the alternatives analysis that we're talking about here and what they can and can't do. So how would that work with us in terms of granting, since it's on a building lot by building lot basis, that waiver would be granted?
The applicant would have to seek a waiver, a special permit for each of those lots for a height waiver.
And
prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, so that would be a condition of ours that prior to the issuance of the building permit.
No, it does not need to be a condition. It's a requirement prior to issuance of a building permit. The building department requires an applicant to show that the project meets the height requirement. If it does not meet the height requirement, then they will not get a building permit until they get a special permit. So the earth removal permit has no bearing on whether a property owner gets a waiver to the height requirement.
Right. Okay. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead. You were going to say something to that.
I want to bring a screen back up, so just bear with me for 1 minute.
Sure.
I'm gonna try and share again. So I don't believe the way this is written that there's any alteration of the plan. The volume proposed for removal does not exceed the minimum practical removal required to accomplish the construction, development, or improvement in accordance with the plans. Now, we've submitted the plans. We've met this standard. I don't think we should be discussing altering the plans, especially when it's a waiverless plan approved by the planning board.
I think it's a subdivision plan.
Sorry,
I think
Jim, go ahead.
I suspect that at the end of the day, one of the things that we're going to need is to consult with town council about the meanings of some of this stuff. But because when I look at this, I think of and I was a member of the planning board way back when, when Tom Swain was in front of me for every once in a while from time to time. And what planning boards approve as subdivision plans, they approve the layout, they approve the layout of lots, they approve frontage. They make a lot of decisions. They don't actually approve the kind of house that's built on it or anything else. I mean, some subdivisions are just sold in lots. Others are done in different ways. When you do a planned residential development, you have the right and obligation to look at the house designs and all of that stuff because it comes with a special permit. But my understanding, at least, of subdivisions is that they allow you to lay out a lot. They don't necessarily guarantee you that you can put exactly the house on it that you want to put on it. Whether, and in fact, they don't go into the, other than to recognize that there are other laws and rules that deal with the building of houses. It's not like the subdivision is going into a lot of things like the building code or other sorts of things. So I don't know that it's the same. I don't think I read that particular section to say, I got a subdivision plan. In my mind, I thought I was going to put 30-foot houses on it. I somehow can't because of the way I'm constructing my road. So therefore you have to give me the permit. I don't read the rules that way. I respect the fact that the applicant may read them a different way. But that's one of the reasons that I think that as we go through this and as we're gathering more information, part of it is to make sure that we're seeking advice of town council with respect to some of these rules. That's number one. Number two, just to get my cards on the table, is that I think these are 4 independent requirements under the section. And I am well open to understanding a dispute about whether or not this is a change in topography or a change in area, whatever, as to whether or not that is injurious to the neighborhood. I'm open to that question. I think there are a lot of issues about it, and it's one of the things that's on my mind. Again, I agree with Jeff, who made a comment earlier that we ought to be thoughtful about what we're looking at. What we are looking at is not a subdivision plan, although there has been approved subdivision plan. We are not looking at a PRD. We are not looking at a lot of things, but what we are looking at is an excavation permit. And I think that the 4th standard of that excavation permit stands as an important standard and is not trumped by the fact that the planning board may or may not have exercised its obligations under the subdivision bylaw, subdivision laws to approve a subdivision.
Could I bring in Josh Latham to address some of those concerns?
Yes.
Good evening. You know, I guess just to kind of bring it back to the overall concept, certainly the subdivision approval approves, you know, the creation of lots for residential use, providing access, meeting the standards of the zoning bylaws as they stand for this district. Going with that, the earth removal special permit really is, it's very clear what it's intended for. It's meant to say, okay, with regards to the approved plans under the zoning bylaws, what's allowed to be built here, really is anything of that, are there appropriate measures in place to ensure that there's no injurious impact on the neighborhood, unfair use of the roadways? That's really the standard of this. And that all relates to the question of earth removal. Certainly the plans that are presented comply with all of the zoning requirements that we're speaking of. So when it comes to a question of whether a condition can be imposed that requires an applicant to then have to get zoning relief, I think that goes beyond the reasonable standards of the board. It's a pretty big leap to say, you know, we're going to approve this only if you go and come back to us and get something that's somewhere between a variance and a special permit. Because we are an as-of-right plan, and the proposals I really think is presented tonight, we've really met every single one of the concerns that have been raised to this point. So I think just to put that out there as we go forward this evening.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? I'm gonna, sorry.
So, I just wanted to clarify, in no way does this special permit grant any relief from height requirement for an individual lot for a building permit. So just to make sure everybody is clear on that.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to public comment if there's nothing else from the board right now. Let's hear that and let's start with that. So who would like to start public comment?
Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street.
Okay, Scott Richardson.
So can we make sure that we do the raise hand function?
Yeah, Scott, I'll let you go, but
the board will call on people.
Just raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, star 9 to raise your hand. But go ahead, Scott.
Great. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great, thank you. I'm Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street. I'm one of the organizers of Save 1442 Maine. And on behalf of the group, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Save 1442 Maine is our grassroots campaign to encourage you to deny the earth removal and special permit requests. We are abutters, neighbors, and residents. We have the support of a cross-section of the town. As of this evening, 358 people, residents, have signed our petition. And no doubt you've seen, and we hope have read, the many letters and emails submitted to the board. We are committed to fulfilling the town's sustainability, climate action, and climate mitigation plans. Thank you for requesting the peer review of one of the aspects of the applicant's earth removal application. While the consultant's scope was narrow, evaluating only some of the earth removal criteria, the applicant's response to the peer review was illuminating. I'll say more about that later. We know you will dig deep on this application. The requested earth removal is unique in its scale. Your decision will have wide-ranging implications for Concord's present and future. So here's what abutters, neighbors, and residents want to share with you. Our opposition to the application is centered within the actual words of the zoning bylaw. We aren't reaching here. Reviewing the purpose of the bylaw, section 1.2, the objectives include a number of statements that provide the context within which you will review the project and make a decision. The bylaw, and so the ZBA, has an objective to conserve health. The proposed development is not consistent with this objective. To remove the earth, the applicant must remove the trees and then transport it all off-site. There is no offset for this pollution, nor is there for the release of the carbon sequestered within the earth. The proposed development is not consistent with the objective of securing safety from flood or other dangers. Dramatic transformation of the currently elevated and sloped landscape and paving much of it with impervious surface is a gamble at best. The loss of tree canopy will make the neighborhood hotter and more vulnerable to climate impacts. Regarding the threat of drought, recall that this section of town is identified by the Nature Conservancy as land that should be reserved for drought resilience. The bylaw in our town have housing commitments to persons of all income levels, not just the wealthy. The proposed subdivision fails to meet this objective, and notably, the plan of 16 large single-family homes imposes an obligation on the town if we are to meet our 40B requirements for affordable housing. The proposed development is not consistent with the objective of conserving natural resources. Clearing 7.7 acres of all trees and vegetation and stripping 18 inches of topsoil is not anyone's definition of preventing blight and pollution. The town's comprehensive long-range plan, Envision 2030, calls for smart development and sustainable development. The zoning bylaw has an objective to encourage the most appropriate use of land. We humbly assert this project is not smart, it's not sustainable, or appropriate. The last objective we highlight is preserving natural, scenic, and aesthetic qualities. The proposed project preserves virtually nothing across the vast majority of the site. It preserves nothing. Let's consider section 7.5.3, the conditions for earth removal. The proposed tree clearing is both remarkable and disheartening. Removing those over 60,000 cubic yards of earth from a site within a moderately dense, busy Concord neighborhood is simply unprecedented. We need to visualize how much earth that is. We'll use a football field and the statue of the Minuteman to help us. So if you have 11.4 yards of earth piled across an entire football field, from sideline to sideline and goal line to goal line, you have the earth removal requested with this project. Now, 11.4 yards high is hard to visualize. So think of it as almost 2.5 Minuteman statues, including one standing one atop another, including the base. Again, this is across an entire football field, and it's coming out of our neighborhood. The language is clear. The permit may be granted. It is not that it must be or shall be granted. The application fails the test of 7.5.3.2. The submitted plans do not minimize changes in existing contours. The proposed contours are not to enhance attractive land utilization, but rather to maximize the number of houses and the size of each house, and so the profits of the project. We know less earth removal is possible because the PRD application, the previous PRD application, required 1/4 the amount. And we see in the applicant's response to the peer review, which pointed out that it was possible to remove less earth, that the applicant could remove less earth, but they don't want to because they'd have to reduce the size of a number of houses. GPI reviewed the materials provided by the applicant and concurs that substantial revisions to the roadway profile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if residences with approximately 30-foot building heights are desired as indicated by the applicant. It's the applicant's decision of the size of the house that drives the calculation, not the minimizing the contours. The application fails test 7.5.3.3. Affecting the removal will be injurious and detrimental to the abutters in the neighborhood. The alteration of the existing topography means that the MBTA rail tracks at 138 feet, which currently are below most of the property, actually will now be at a higher elevation than most of the property. Combining this with the tree removal, this means the diesel emissions and noise from the train will disperse over the neighborhood, likely impacting health and home values. Regarding 7.5.3.3, we know the applicant has a right to use the roads, but the traffic study doesn't consider the type of vehicle, the emissions from the trucks, the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, nor the impact on roads of 4,396 new trucks in the heart of West Concord. I do appreciate the applicant's previous comments regarding emissions, but I would humbly assert to the applicant that Main Street is a neighborhood. The number of trips is simply staggering. A much more detailed and complete traffic study is required, one that takes into account the dispersal of diesel emissions and their impact on the people and the houses in the neighborhood. Would anyone want to have 2 additional large trucks every 6 minutes in your neighborhood for 6 hours a day for 36 days? If there were 2 large trucks going down your street every 36 minutes, every 6 minutes for 6 hours a day for 36 days, would that alter your use of the street? Probably, I would hope so. The emissions from the transport miles in Concord, 7,400 miles, new miles in our town, are in a word breathtaking. And again, I understand the applicant trying to talk about the deal they have to get rid of the materials at the site, but that helps that project. That doesn't do anything about this project. We're focusing ourselves here on the emissions from this project. Keep in mind, this only considers transport. Don't we also need to know the impact on air quality of the machinery associated with clearing the land, processing the trees and vegetation, reconfiguring the site, and loading the earth? So we'd like the applicant to detail the machinery, the process, the emissions, and their impact, and to identify the offsets for the emissions. If we're going to grant them a special permit to remove 60,000 cubic yards, let's understand what that's going to cost us. Section 11.6, the special permit text, has multiple criteria to test. Do the adverse effects outweigh the beneficial impacts? What benefits? Tax revenue is the only public benefit of the proposed project. But even then, the nature of the project, large homes with multiple bedrooms, means we will likely have 30 to 40 new students in the Thoreau district. There, your costs go up. So yes, you get the revenue from the homes, but you just blew out the Thoreau School. Any development will provide revenue. Any development can provide revenue. The real question is whether the development provides the most net revenue. This proposed project may have high revenue, but it's also got dramatically high costs. Other types of development might provide greater net revenues without the many adverse impacts. 11.6 references the particular characteristics of the site. This proposal fails the test because the adverse effects result from the applicant's desire to overcome the site characteristics in pursuit of their goals. In other words, they need to overcome the nature of the site as opposed to honoring the particular characteristics of the site. A proposal that left the back slope unaltered would provide benefits with far fewer adverse effects and would honor the particular characteristics of the site. The application fails the test.
This is a very good presentation. I just want to make sure that you're going to wrap it up somewhat soon.
I'm almost done. The application fails the test of 11.6.1. Boards, committees, and town meeting consistently identify low impact development, climate action, resilience, and more affordable housing as our priority needs. What part of the applicant's proposal speaks to the town's focus on sustainability and mitigation of the effects of climate change? Regarding 11.6.3, Highland Street, Center Street, Main Street, Kona Street, Prairie and Central have wonderful character, not because the homes are large, but because there's a diverse housing mix with mature trees. The proposed application is not consistent with the character and will detract from the neighborhoods. It's a monoculture. The character of the neighborhood will be impacted when the site becomes essentially a mining operation for topsoil. This is very important. The applicant makes money by selling the materials removed from the site. The recent deal to sell the earth to the StarMet site evinces the backwards incentive here. There's no incentive for them to reduce the exported earth. The more they export, the more they make. Regarding 11.6.5, no reasonable person disputes this project will impact the environment: air, water, temperature, noise, wildlife, CO2, soil. Consider the carbon released by earth removing and earth removal. 7.7 million pounds of CO2 emissions will be released at the site as part of this project. In a town trying to reduce the emissions, where will the offset come from? A couple more. Consider the local geography. I've indicated a box to indicate the area to be altered. 700 feet from Thoreau, 650 feet from Montessori, 250 feet from Rideout, where kids are running around. When the trees and vegetation are cleared, the MBTA diesel emissions won't be processed by the trees. They will linger. Finally, 11.6.6 fiscal impacts. In 2021, we know we need to value trees. The town uses TreeKeeper software. Our calculations indicate the cost of the lost trees exceeds $3 million over a 10-year period. The proposed project has large-scale, long-term adverse effects. Where are the offsets for these effects? Who thinks this project is so great that it deserves an exemption to the earth removal limit? Has the applicant proven they satisfy the criteria for the special permit? Please deny the earth removal and special permit requests. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the best I can to kind of balance everyone's what's the word, time here. Please take us at our word that we're listening and we're getting all the points. So please, when you make your point, if it's been made already, I would ask that you consider that it's already 9:30 and we have another application after this to consider. So that being said, who is up next for public comment? Did that scare everyone? Okay.
I'm happy to go.
Pamela Dritt. Go ahead, Pamela.
I would like to mention that this development will attract new houses like these won't appeal to environmentally aware buyers who understand the threat of the climate crisis. And instead, they'll attract people who aren't aware of the urgency of it or Concord's carbon reduction goals. And that will make it harder for us who are concerned to protect our town and achieve our goals. We can't exempt the rules for something that doesn't give us a real advantage. Please deny this special permit.
Thank you. Jack Madigan.
Yes, thank you. Jack Madigan, 215 Prairie Street. I just wanted to bring the attention back to the fact that Main Street is at 156 feet elevation. And it right now it slopes up to about 160, 170 where the homes currently are and where the current hill on the property is, the topography. And then it goes down to 138, which is where the commuter track is. Once that hill is removed, we're going to be able to look from Main Street right down to the railroad tracks. You will hear all that noise, and all that pollution will then be hitting all the neighborhoods, all the Thoreau School neighborhoods. And I just don't think people are understanding that. Once those hills are gone and once the topography is adjusted, the site is no longer the same. And once we clear cut the entire site, you're never going to be able to do anything with a piece of property that has always just had woods on it and those two homes. We really should be considering keeping the topography and keeping the whole back of the site off this, unless they can use the topography and do a better job of placing the homes on the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Hi, this is Dan Stapleton. I'm Cynthia's husband. We're sharing our computer.
Okay, sorry. Can you just give your address?
Yeah, so Dan Stapleton from 20 Conant Street. I just want to bring up a couple of points and not be wordy since much has been said already. But I do request that you do not approve the earth removal for the proposed subdivision. And I request you consider a couple of points. The first is that the earth removal regulatory basis is 1,000 cubic yards. So kind of seems reasonable to infer by that standard that 1,000 yards is generally the, quote, acceptable amount of earth removal that is consistent with the town goals and regulations. And it also seems reasonable to assume that special permits are intended for situations where you really have a marginal increase to that. So maybe 1,500, 2,000 yards. This application is for 60 times greater than that standard. So the question is, what is the basis for approving something that is so dramatically greater than that minimal standard of 1,000 cubic yards? From my perspective, it's a request to fundamentally, to construct a fundamentally different scale of earthwork that is applied by the zoning bylaws, and I believe it's inconsistent with the town goals. And I also request that the ZBA identify where that's been done in the past for residential subdivisions. I'm not aware that it has been done in the town of Concord. So this is clearly, beyond this project, approval of this special permit could establish a highly uncertain precedence for the town going forward. What's acceptable? 100,000 yards, 200,000 yards, take down an entire hill? What is the basis for that decision? So I don't think this is straightforward. The second point that I want to bring up is this idea of topographic change. And there's been a lot in the last few comments that have talked about some of the implications of that, but I want to add to that. And that's really the character of the town of Concord and the neighborhood is fundamentally defined by the landform and the landscape. And that's intimately linked to the natural topography. And I request that the ZBA consider adverse impacts to the town and the neighborhood as they relate to the character, landscape, and topography. This is a significant topographic change. And I don't think this is a minor point. If a simple drive around the neighborhood or all of Concord, but in this neighborhood in particular, you will see that all of the roadways, all of the homes, everything is based on historically been based on conforming to those natural landforms. And now we're talking about, I mean, after all, this is Highland Avenue, right? So now we're talking about effectively removing a major land feature, topographic land feature that shows up on, colonial and post-colonial maps of the area. I think I'm going to leave it at that, but I will note this idea of attractive land utilization, not detrimental to the neighborhood. When you're making this decision, it shows up in a lot of places. It shows up in the earthwork removal criteria. It shows up in the subdivision regulations, section 6. It shows up in Concord's comprehensive long-range plan. It, as was previously noted, also shows up in the basic criteria for special permits. So I just want to close that there has not been an alternative subdivision plan proposed that conforms to the existing topography, that has a less amount of earth removal. The plan that's been proposed is really for the benefit of the developer and not necessarily the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. John Cooley.
Yeah, can you hear me? John Cooley, 80 Highland Street. I just want to kind of speak to my concern, which is sort of a real concern about the the trucking and the earth removal. We live kind of on the walking route for all the kids to Thoreau Elementary School. We watch these kids go to and from school every day. We have our own kids here, and they walk right by the site. I mean, this is on the walking route. I don't understand sort of how we can contemplate this. And even more than that, I would wonder who is going to be accountable for the health impacts on these kids. Is it the developer? Is it the town? I don't know. I'd like to sort of understand the answer to that question, because we're very worried about this. This is not sort of a technicality for us or the neighborhood. This was sort of viewed as a real and present danger. And I don't know that that's really being given the respect it deserves.
Thank you. Krista Collins. Krista, are you? No?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. 55 Highland Street, and I agree with all the comments made so far. I had a specific question regarding the geotechnical recommendation number 3 and the proof compacting with at least 4 passes of a vibratory compactor below all the retaining walls. Kind of wanted to understand a little bit better what exactly that means, what impact it will have on the neighborhood, and sort of generally speaking, that's one small component, maybe small or not small, I don't know, but when you add that to the truck traffic and other construction work on the site and think about the overall timeline for this project, I'm not sure, I think we're sort of getting sort of piecemeal bits of the impacts, but it's hard to kind of understand the magnitude of how this is going to affect the neighborhood. So I'd be specifically interested in hearing more.
Okay, Lindsay, do you want to quickly respond to that? Is Lindsay still there?
Yes, I'm here. I could let Kurt respond to that.
Oh, yeah, Kurt, do you want to?
My initial,
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Sure, yes. The geotechnical recommendation number 3 was regarding compacting below retaining walls. We talk about the footing for retaining walls and also behind retaining walls. Now, I didn't design the retaining walls, but I envisioned there would be very small retaining walls, maybe a few feet tall, maybe 4, 5, 6 feet tall. There could be maybe more than one step, means there may be 2 or 3 walls behind each other. But what a contractor typically use, they use very small compactor in these conditions, and they usually walk behind compactors. The wave from the compaction wouldn't travel far. They don't go beyond, I would say, maybe 10 feet or so. So if a building is like 50 feet away, it wouldn't be impacted, if that's a concern.
Okay, thank you for answering that. Candace Nelson. Candace, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. 31 Candace Nelson, 31 Center Village. I don't want to repeat what others have said, but as an abutter, I really need to stress the fact that this earth removal process will definitely be detrimental to me and my family, and I assume the entire neighborhood, as others have explained. My husband is chronically ill. If this goes forward, I'm going to guess that we will have to leave the neighborhood for the duration of the earth removal process. My husband's systems are compromised right, left, and center. The only bodily system of his that is not compromised is his respiratory system. So I'm not willing to subject him to what we will have to face for the benefit of the profit of one developer and 16 future homeowners. I'm sorry. If there were other community benefits, we might be able to say, okay, we'll vacate for 6 months while this happens because it's good for the town. But nothing about this is good for the town. And it's certainly not good for me and my family. It is bad. That's all.
Thank you. Galis, I don't know who, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. I just want to thank all the neighbors. I have
sorry,
been
can you
learning.
introduce yourself and give your address?
Yes, Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road. Thank you to all the neighbors where I'm learning a lot. I just noticed some, I just wanted to make an observation to something that Mr. Latham said in interpreting 7.5.3.3, that the third item on there about topography, etc., that the earth removal aspect of the bylaw was after all the planning and everything was done. And how I understood what he was saying was that item C does not really apply to that extent once the planning has been approved. And my reaction to that was that had that been the case, then it wouldn't, that item would not be there, that the section, that it would stop at the item A of that section, which says if it's necessary for the construction of the plans. So I disagree with his interpretation, for whatever it's worth, that that item C should be taken very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly.
Beverly Bryant, 175 Conant Street. My concern is about the detriment to the environment in terms of when this earth is removed, the drainage is going to go down into what is in fact a vernal pool. I know they say there's a little catchment area above it. I suspect that a lot of this water is going to affect that. People have lawns. They have pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizer, and that is all going to drain down into the bottom of that site, and it's going to affect the wildlife in that area. That is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see anyone else. Is there someone I'm missing? Beverly, you still have your hand raised, but we just spoke, so.
Elizabeth, I can't seem to raise my hand. I'm a resident.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's right. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Joe Stein, 21 Thoreau Street. So I'll be brief. I echo a lot of what's already been said. I've read the bylaws and the conditions for the special permit, and I see no legal basis to grant this request. Many of the conditions are grossly violated. And I also think a lot of studies still need to occur to ensure the viability of the project, health, safety, environmental. The applicant really hasn't put forth any studies to kind of check those boxes. We need a plan with reduced scope, which will require less grading, smaller houses, and improve the neighborhood, not destroy it. I feel like the applicant is treating this as his own personal sandbox. And I think I agree with prior comments that granting this will create really a very dangerous precedent in town. And I do think we need to enforce the special permit conditions as written and deny the application. Thanks.
Thank you. John Cooley, I know you've spoken before. If you have something new and
Yeah, John Cooley, just in response to one of the responses, Krista brought up the vibration issue. We just know from experience, just with the 2 units that went in, that the vibration was significant. I don't know if it was from trees being felled, if it was from digging, if it was from movement of construction equipment, but it was significant. It was sort of like a minor earthquakes throughout the day kind of thing, starting very early in the morning. It affected our sleep and our kids' sleep. So I only expect that to be worse. I don't know what the source of that was, if it was the earth removal or the trees, but it was significant. I don't think it had anything to do with compactors for retaining walls. It was something to do with the excavation or tree removal.
okay, thank you. Pamela, something new and something brief?
Yes, 13 Concord Green, Unit 4. I just want to point out that in all of the over 50 letters that have been written, I have not seen one single support for this project. Every single public response has been negative. Perhaps there's some I haven't seen, but.
Okay, thank you. Janet.
I live in Concord Riverwalk, which is next to the new Mill Run development. I just wanted to mention the noise and the vibration that you do get from big digging equipment, earth removal. Well, there's no earth removal there, but there's been addition of earth there. And today they were actually putting some retaining walls in, and that certainly that one didn't vibrate my house, but I could certainly hear it through my triple glazed windows with no problem whatsoever. It's definitely disruptive to listen to construction close to one's house.
Thank you. Patrick.
Hi, yes, this is Pat Henning at 28 Conant Street. I just wanted to speak out against the approval of the earth removal for this project. The person made a nice presentation of the issues for the developer. The one thing that I just wanted to point out was the developer mentioned that everyone across town had all the town officials had a chance to review and kind of nod their head at this application. However, he said nothing about the neighbors or the people who live in the area and how they responded. And I think you've seen that tonight, but I just wanted to point that out. And the language on his slide 4 or slide 5 about towards the bottom of where, it really matters how it affects the quality of life of the people around the development. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the last hand I see. So I am going to close public comment. Josh. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to be very brief, we obviously heard a lot of comments from the neighborhood. We do understand those. Just to bring it back to really what this is all about, the bylaw is a balance of public interest and private property rights. And we certainly understand there's a lot of comments about not enough public benefit and public concerns about this property. But at the same time, obviously the board's charge is to balance those public concerns against the private rights of the property owner. None of the houses in this entire area would have been built if everybody could say you can't build next to me. It's obviously there's a phenomenon here that we need to take account for all the concerns like drainage, fire safety, wetlands, and so forth. And really that's what the applicant has done to this point. This bylaw is the embodiment of the right of somebody who owns private property to do what is allowed under the Constitution, subject to reasonable regulation by the government. And that's what this board's charge is here. Really, to that point, the board has a tough decision, always, because if it was a popularity contest, many things wouldn't be approved. And so you're held to a higher standard, much like a judge would be, to do what's right under the property rights that an individual has. We've heard all these comments. They've been really addressed many times over many public hearings, both before the planning board to this point, to this board at another time. Really, the plan presented tonight and all the comments that we've presented satisfy those obligations under the bylaw. And with that point, I just want to close. I know it's been a long evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board. I don't know how much we want to discuss now and what questions we have. I'm just gonna lay, as Jim said, lay my cards on the table as well. This is, I think we do need to go to town council. I understand the applicant kind of pushing the idea that this plan was approved, therefore anything that is reasonably has to be done to have accomplished this plan, we kind of have to approve, paraphrasing what you're saying. I can't see how we get past 7.5.3.3 in all honesty, but I know there are private property rights. I know there are legal rights. I know there are things called regulatory takings. I understand all that. Where I am with this is going to town council and asking what the limits are here. Other comments? Come on, someone on the board has to comment.
Yeah, I agree. 7.5.3.3 is the toughest one to kind of get my head around. And you know, just from a high level, hearing from both sides, you know, I hear the applicant, I feel, speaking more to the letter of the bylaw here and trying to hit the points that, you know, on its face is asking for. I hear a lot of the public concerns being more the spirit of the bylaws as a whole, and the town goals, which, you know, I respect that the applicant does not think those are relevant to kind of the technical decision here. But I certainly hear those and think that they are critical to any decision we make here, and we need to think about them as we consider the black letter, the standards here.
And I guess also to point out to everyone who spoke, what's before us is specifically an earth removal permit. We as a board did not approve this subdivision plan. So talk about the planning of this parcel that's kind of outside of this scope. So I'm just speaking to people trying to convince us that it should be planned differently. That's not what's before us right now. Jim?
Well, I spoke earlier, and I guess I don't have too much more to add other than I'll say two things. One is I think that the sheer volume of the information presented tonight, both by the applicant, the applicant's counsel, neighbors, et cetera, is such that I've been sitting here taking a lot of notes, and I really need to try to think about all of those things against the earth removal permit. So I really do commend us to, the decision of the chair previously announced to have a deliberation in full at a next meeting. I do think that it is important to recognize that different boards have been given responsibility by various laws, whether they be state subdivision laws or town zoning bylaws or other things, to make different decisions about projects. And, you know, it was not the responsibility of the planning board in approving the subdivision to consider whether or not the earth removals that was required here would satisfy all of the concerns under the bylaws. And I don't believe that the board would have considered that in any definitive way, because they would not have had the power to consider it in that way. Similarly, I think it's important for us to look at this and not feel as if we are bound by a decision of another board on another matter. That is to say, whether or not there's a proper subdivision here or not. You know, as I believe someone said during the course of this, if a proper subdivision was the only requirement to getting the earth removal approval, then there wouldn't be a separate section and there wouldn't be a separate body to think about it. So, you know, these provisions are in here for some reason, even if there is a approved subdivision. I remain extremely skeptical about the notion that a approved subdivision in the town of Concord gives somebody the right to build a 30-foot house, no matter what else. And I'll just say that straight out. I don't think that's the law. Subdivisions were approved for a long time when people were building houses that weren't 2-story or 3-story or whatever it is houses. So I think that what we need to do the next time is to take 7.5.3 and go through the 3 criteria and see how this all lines up against it and make the best judgment that we can on behalf of Concord. And I do think that it's useful to have town council available, because I think that there are some nuances in this that I would like to, you know, get some advice from, in addition to reading them ourselves.
I think that sounds right to me. Elizabeth, can we get town council to attend our next meeting?
I will make the request to the town manager first thing in the morning.
Okay, any other comments from the board?
Would it be helpful if the gentleman who made the presentation on behalf of the 358 petitioners, is that available, that could be submitted so we could have that in our hands?
So Heather, Heather's already on it. Tomorrow morning, she will be sending an email to Mr. Ruda for his presentation and the presentation made by the during public comment.
Good, thank you.
I
have another question. Is there any information? We've heard a number of comments about noise pollution, air pollution. Is there any data available to support those allegations?
I'm sure there is significant data out there. However, as far as its air quality emissions, that is, this was a conversation previously on at different public hearings, and I don't know if it was this one or it might have been during the planning board's subdivision, but air quality issues are not within the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Appeals. That is at a jurisdiction at the state level. And the town does have a construction noise bylaw that limits the different, the time period that construction can happen. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tom.
If I understood your comment on the air pollution, that would suggest that we can't take that into consideration.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go back and find the reference that I'm trying to remember, but I believe that is a correct statement. But I will look for that for the board for your deliberation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I think we should go ahead, continue this to our August meeting at 7:20. I will note that the public hearing has been closed and the next meeting will be deliberation among the board and the applicant. I hope town council.
So during deliberation, there's no public comment. There's no comment from the applicant. It is the board, staff and council.
Board staff and council, correct. Okay, so just to say, we will have the applicants and the public's presentations available. So it's not that we're not considering those. We just have heard them and we will all be looking at them in the next month. And they will be on the website. Anything else from the board? Is there anything else we want, Elizabeth? I want to cover our bases, make sure we have all of our, all the staff we want to be here at the next meeting here. All right, can I get a motion to continue this? 7:20 is the time. And sorry, I don't even know the date, August.
I believe it's August. I'm going to say August 12th. Hang on. That's correct. Let's see. Heather's awesome. August 12th, 7:20.
When, by the way, I'll be out of town, but hopefully I'll be able to log in. On the
Better be able to log in.
It is something that the board can discuss when at the end of your meeting and election of officers, how you want to conduct your meetings. But if you're going to be out of town, then there'll have to be some virtual aspect to it.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
So
Make the motion.
Okay.
So moved. So
Great.
moved.
Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
I
Who moved and who seconded?
seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll see you in August. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 7:25, Concord Country Club. I think similarly on this one, let's kind of round up our information collecting, and potentially we'll get to a point where we can have a draft decision for our next meeting, is my hope, but let's see what happens.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson. It's Mark Bobrowski for the applicant.
Is it morning already? It feels like it's morning.
Let me check. Oh, you're right. It's just a little short of that.
A little short.
My office, for the record, is in Damon Mill, and I'm here on behalf of the Concord Country Club. Also with me tonight, mostly to answer any questions that might come up, are Greg Sincata and Peter Rapocho from the club, Paul Kirschner, our project engineer, Peter Nelson, our hydrogeologist, and most importantly, Elizabeth Morse, who has news to report with regard to planting plans negotiated with Delia from the Natural Resources Committee. So I'm going to turn this over shortly for a short presentation by Elizabeth, and I'll take the microphone back if you'll let me. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks. You are muted. How many times have we heard that, right?
Unmute there. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Can you show the drawings?
Oh, go ahead.
Drawings are up.
Do you have the drawings?
They're up.
Which drawing do you, this is a landscape plan. Do you want what?
So we have two landscape plans. One is
yep,
berm planting plan, and one is the landscape plan.
Yeah, we got them. We're seeing them both. Which do you want, berm or the other one?
For some reason, I'm not seeing either of them. So let's start with the smaller scale one that shows, it's called the berm, it's called the irrigation pond plan with planting.
Okay, we have that.
Okay, so the landscape plans have been revised with input from Delia Kay at NRC. And she has requested 3 things. 1, to increase the area of planting. 2, to increase the density of planting. And then to seed all disturbed areas with a conservation wildlife seed mix that's native to the area. On previous plans, we had a smaller area of planting, and we had a fescue mix, and the plants were not nearly as dense. She has requested that the planting go not only on the berm below the proposed irrigation pond, but also up the slope. And you can see a red line that marks an arrow that goes from the green on one side of the irrigation pond all the way up the hill to another green. And she's requested that there be a maximum of 20 yards to the tree line, or a revegetated line from the center line of the line of play. So the area above the pond is all new planted area that we've added in this plan. And according to NRC guidelines, they would like to see trees at 10 feet on center and shrubs at 5 feet on center, with the exclusion of some larger shrubs that could be 8 feet on center. And accordingly, we have increased from the last plan that you saw. We've gone from 42,775 square feet to 69,083 square feet. And we've increased the number of trees from 54 to 421 trees, shrubs from 137 to 664, for a total of 1,085 plants. And in addition, there is an overflow from the pond. So if you then go to the next plan.
I'm sorry, before you do that, can you just go back 1 second? Because I just want, so that red line that we're looking at here that kind of goes over the pond, that's presumably the line of play?
That's a center line of the line of play.
Right, and now we're talking about 20 yards, maximum of 20 yards on.
From the center line to a revegetated
Thank
line.
you.
Yep.
Just was trying to check.
Yep, sorry. For some reason, I can't see the plan, so I'm looking at
Yeah, I understand.
my plans at my desk. So then if we could go to the berm planting plan, which is an enlarged view of the proposed planting. You can see that there's a combination of native plants which have been approved by Delia. Combination of red oak, white pines, white spruce, black cherry, 9-bark viburnum. I'm happy to discuss any individual plants with you, but I'm guessing that that's not necessary. But what you can see is there's a bright green line that goes from the irrigation pond down the slope, and that's actually a riprap overflow. And NRC has Delia has requested that be not just riprap stone, but that be, and you can see a detail on the drawing, that be covered with a composted mulch, and then overseeded with a conservation wildlife mix. So that's in a nutshell the changes we've made. And I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss any particular details of the plan.
So just again, another question on the berm plan that we're looking at. I'm looking toward the right where the plan goes sort of up one side of the pond, or kind of starts to go around the side of the pond.
Yes.
I take it that's the additional trees that were put in because of the requirement to be within.
Yes, the plan, I don't know if you can kind of see the you can see some evergreen plants and where it says 13 white pine and 13 white spruce, that was essentially the end of the planting that we proposed at the last meeting. And so everything above that is additional planting.
Okay, all of that up up that slope, really.
Up that slope. So, and then we've made the planting is much, much denser. So we've actually gone from 191 plants on the last plan to 1,085 plants on this plan. And then the entire slope will be seeded with a conservation mix, which eventually in the planted areas will not survive, but it will hold the slope while the plants get established.
Great, thanks.
And Elizabeth, so this, I mean, I think we got these plans. These are the same plans that we got in our materials today, yes? Or yesterday?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
just recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Auto press.
Yeah, okay.
And to confirm what the applicant saying that Delia signed off on these and has asked for nothing else.
Oh, I can tell you exactly in a second. Hang on one second, please. Her comment, final comment to me was, the planting plan is a robust suite of conifers and deciduous trees and shrubs that will provide good structural diversity and resident screening in the forested landscape over time. The plantings are small, so will take time to develop, but since they are small, they have a higher likelihood of establishing and growing quickly. Plant a 12-foot tree and it generally stays the same size for several years until the roots become established in their new home.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I do have a summation that I'd like to give with regard to the various criteria that are set forth in section 7.3 of the zoning bylaw. If now is the appropriate time, I'm happy to do it. I also sent this in to Elizabeth about a week ago, and I know there's public comment yet to come. But we do not have anything else to present because that was the only remaining item we viewed on the agenda for us.
Okay. One thing, Elizabeth, do you have any other town news from town staff? I think water, sewer, I know you've been coordinating all of that, so.
So since the last meeting, town staff, especially water and sewer, had quite a few meetings with the applicant and their team. And then we also met after that to talk about just the project and should the board move forward and grant the special permit, what kind of information that we were going to have to pull together to then meet with the applicant to come up with viable conditions that allow for the monitoring and for the town to be able to have some type of ability to enforce the monitoring plan that Water and Sewer has reviewed. So we definitely came to a consensus that that information can be pulled together and work with the applicant on developing those conditions. But it's gonna take a little bit more time to actually pull that together into a decision.
Okay, thank you. You know what, why don't you give your summation now and then we'll open to public comment and see where we are then.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, and maybe you're going to bring it up, Mr. Bobrowski, but this is your letter dated July 2nd, 2021 to the board.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, well, Mr. Bobrowski's muted.
Mr. Bobrowski's moved.
I
Yeah,
was
I
muted.
heard you, Jim.
I thank you for that, Mr. Smith. And this is directly in response to your point made at the last meeting that the previous submittals with regard to the criterion 7.5.3 were a bit outdated. The plan has changed substantially. So I won't take a lot of time. You can read
And
it.
I'm just trying to so that is, I mean, I've read it and I
I've
have
read
it in front of me too. So I would like to hear your summary, but I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing because I had marked some things on it. So,
Yeah,
okay,
you
that's
are.
better. Okay, got it.
So the first criterion is that the volume proposed for removal does not exceed the minimum practical removal required to accomplish construction, development, or improvement in accordance with the plans. I witnessed your debate at the last hearing about this issue. I think this is a rather simpler matter. There were 1,200 cubic yards of material that were removed from the property. Mea culpa, the applicant did not quite understand the requirements at that time. I believe the original application or one of the versions of the application talked about 19,000 square feet, but now you can see that it's reduced to the 1,200 cubic yards already removed. I've given you some statistics here about the amount of earth removal that will take place, even given the minimum amount. It's about 26,200 cubic yards of the excavation, not removal, just excavation. And only 1,200 yards have been, in fact, removed from the site. Most importantly, reading 7.5.3.1, I think that this results in an excess of 201 cubic yards over the 999 cubic yards that could be removed from the property as of right under the current version of 7.5.3. So it'd be hard to imagine that the volume proposed for removal does not exceed the minimum practical. It's gone. The only thing that the board could plausibly do here is require us to bring back 201 cubic yards, which is a very minimal task, but I don't view it as necessary, and I hope you do not either. Under the next criterion, 7.5.3.2, the requirement is to have the removal designed to minimize changes in existing contours, to enhance attractive land utilization, effective drainage, suitable road gradients, access, or other design considerations. I note that the focus here is on the removal, not the irrigation pond. The irrigation pond does not result in 26,200 cubic yards of removal. Only the 1,200 yards that have already been taken off the property were removed. So under the circumstances, I think, have done a good job regarding the irrigation pond itself. The berms have been planted that face the neighbors immediately to the north. There has been a recontouring of the third hole that's been incorporated into the field of play. It's important to note that this is not just an irrigation pond, it's also work that's being done on the layout of the golf course itself, which is, as a practical matter, happens all the time on golf courses across the country. So the third tee box and the fairway will be realigned. The irrigation pond will be incorporated into the play. If you're Bryson DeChambeau, that'll be a long hit over the irrigation pond, but some golfers, I'm sure, will be up to the challenge. And the planting plan that results here has been approved by your conservation agent. And then the last criterion under 7.5 is number 3. Removal will not be detrimental or injurious to abutters or the neighborhood, either by alteration of existing topography or substantial change in the use of the streets in the neighborhood. Again, the focus here is on the removal. So the removal has already occurred with regard to the likely suspects causing harm to the neighborhood, in particular truck traffic, which you discussed at your last hearing. That's already occurred. And as far as I know, no serious problems were reported. The other aspects of this, including the replanting, take into account the fact that the nearest neighbors are 275 feet away from the pond and 135 feet from the limit of clearing. We've carefully worked with your conservation agent to replant as best we can. I drove the street the other day. I think there's minimum visibility to the excavated areas, and that'll certainly get better once the area is planted. So those are the criteria that pertain in section 7.5.3. I also took the added step of commenting on the generic criteria for a special permit, which are in 11.6. I think the most important one of relevance here is 11.6.1. impacts on community needs, or economic or community needs. And this is where we'll trumpet the accomplishments of our consulting hydrogeologist, Peter Newman, who worked with representatives of the town to come up with his well management plan. As Elizabeth Hughes said just a minute ago, it'll take some time and work to iron out conditions that bring this well management plan into a permit as will be appropriate. But at the end of the day, if you just look at the bulleted items on page 4 of my memo, Mr. Newton reports that the irrigation pond, not the removal, the irrigation pond will reduce acreage irrigated during drought, reduce irrigation well pumping during declared drought conditions, put in a new monitoring well strategically located to track groundwater levels, real-time telemetry of groundwater level in the monitor well to facilitate tracking and decision-making, monthly in-season annual reporting of pumping and groundwater levels, and discussion with the town if they're willing to discuss the data in the reports and possible adjustments in well management. I think the idea here overall is that by putting in the irrigation pond, and it's designed specifically for a period of no recharge over 30 days, there will be less draw on the wells. If natural precipitation recharges the pond, that gives a little bit of a timing gap for people to sit down and talk about the conditions that may or may not be applicable by way of drought at that time. I don't see the other conditions here as having a terrible relevance. The traffic flow and safety concerns, it's done. There's no trucking that will ensue post-permit. With regard to adequacy of utilities and public services, we're not tying into them. Impacts on neighborhood character, I think that response is primarily Lily's landscaping plan, which she discussed, and that is a particular benefit to the neighborhood. Again, the traffic impacts on neighborhood character have long passed. Impacts on the natural environment, I think that's covered in Peter's answer to the criterion 11.6.1, and fiscal impacts I do not believe is relevant. So, and I recall drafting those criteria when I sat on the planning board for town meeting approval. So that's our presentation. We would urge the board to close the public hearing tonight. Of course, once you've heard from the neighbors who are still present. Last time I looked, there are 37 participants, not counting us on our team or you on the board. And obviously, we're here to answer any questions you have. As I said, Peter Newton is here, as is Paul Kirshner.
Great, thank you. Jim, did you have questions? I know you said you had some notes on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it maybe went to the issue that Elizabeth and Mr. Bobrowski raised with respect to the monitoring criteria. So is it a fair summary, and I'll address this to both of you, is it a fair summary to say that the parties here being the town on the one hand and the golf course on the other, or the golf course or Mr. Newton at least on the other, have sort of believed that they have general, what I might call term sheet agreement on where this monitoring is headed, but they're but in order to write assuming if the board were to approve this permit, in order to write those permit conditions, there's work to be done. Did I get that right? Is that the key?
I think that's correct, but I'll defer to Peter Newton if he has better information.
I'm not sure I have better information, but so you're basically correct. So what we've proposed, and talking to the town, is basically reporting, right? We've proposed the triggered reductions in acreage irrigated, which would be a consequent reduction in the well pumping. What we've proposed with John Rogers and the water and sewer is this data doesn't exist yet, right? So the town's been operating this well, or the course has been operating this well these wells for 20 years. We have no data. So I don't have any trigger points that I can look at historical data and make a statement. It's like, all right, when groundwater levels get to this point, we'll reduce the well pumping. We don't have that information yet. And I've talked to John about this on a number of occasions, that to put a number in is just an arbitrary number. He acknowledges that we should gather actual data, evaluate the data, the two parties, myself and the town and John, and discuss after a year or so of pumping and you know, of operation with the irrigation well pond. Have we identified anything that looks like it could be a cause for implementing some sort of structural controls on the well operation? But my position to John is to do anything like that right now is premature, and it's not based on data, and it's not based on science. We have to collect the data to be able to evaluate it. And John recognizes that, and I think he's trying to, on his side, identify something to provide the board that sounds like that is conditions. But my gentle pushback to John is that we don't have any of that information yet. So I'm asking the board to be patient with us while we collect the data. We've committed to working with the Water and Sewer Department closely. We've offered up monthly reporting in season. I've told John, the data is all going to be electronic. It's all going to be available. We can report that. We can collate that data at any time schedule he likes, time interval he likes, whether that's weekly. He said daily. I mean, we could send it to him daily. It's available. It will be available online for John and the staff and the ZBA and the neighbors and whomever to view it. So it's going to be a publicly accessible, monitoring well. What we'll need to provide, or what won't be, what isn't publicly available or readily available is the well pumping data, which is just maintained in the country club's SCADA system. But the well data is going to be, it's going to have a cellular link. So anybody that has the address for that cellular link will be able to look at what the groundwater level is in that monitoring well.
Okay.
What's going to be important is evaluating that data in relation to the town's pumping and the country club's pumping, and seeing if we can make sense of.
That's good, Mr. Newton. Let me just follow up with two very short questions. The one is that has the town and the country club, you're all agreed as to where these monitors are going to be located, right?
Yes.
And then secondly, are you in agreement as to the data that will be collected?
Yes.
Okay.
Pumping data from both the town and the country club, and groundwater levels at the monitoring well.
Great, thank you.
Can I follow up that with Peter for a second and ask whether or not, and this goes to Elizabeth's point, you, in your report that's dated May 17th, I believe, on page 2, you've got irrigated acreage as drought severity increases, and you've got another table below that, which I think talks about Massachusetts declared drought levels. Well, I understand that's not monitoring well information. Is that a starting point for fashioning a condition, in your opinion?
So I'm going to jump in here and say all of that information that's in that report as far as a monitoring protocol, that is what town staff will work with Mr. Newton and the golf course to take that and turn those into enforceable conditions and agreements as far as who does what, when, and how that goes back and forth. So that was my comment on what the town will be working with the applicant on between now and writing a decision with conditions.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open public comment since it's almost 10:30. Public comment. Jack Madigan.
Sorry about that. Jack Madigan, 215 Prairie Street. Quick question regarding, I understand the concept of the monitoring well. Will the country club also be required to provide to the town a drought management plan? I understand
Yes.
right now there is not one, but is that going forward? So
Yes.
now, and going forward with regard to we see the big signs in town saying no watering lawns. On every day, you have to pick one day, those signs we see. Is there going to be anything in that drought management plan which holds them accountable with regard to when the town is in a drought? I understand right now we're in this rainstorm, but generally it's a drought. Will there be something enforceable to the country club?
Yes, that's what we will be working on as far as how that management plan is reflected in the conditions in the decision and the enforceability of those conditions.
Okay, so that's going to be reflective in terms of any type of approval or measures going forward from here. That plan
Yes.
will be there. That in addition to the monitoring well.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other comments? Sharon.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to all the ZBA board members for your thoughtful analysis of this project.
I'm sorry, you need to state your name and your address for the record.
Jane McGregor, 70 Williams Road. We the neighborhood of Williams Road have submitted 2 letters to the ZBA, and we ask you to take a look at them with very important questions, information that has not yet been provided, and very important considerations ultimately in the decision that you'll make on this project. You can read the specifics of the letters, but just to summarize, we talk about that this project began with gross violations, environmental violations, including wetlands and earth removal violations that significantly impact our neighborhood. There's no getting around that. We have been severely impacted, and we will be more impacted as this project, if this project proceeds. The club's limited alternatives analysis and the proposal for a storage pond and pump house in a biologically rich corner of the course abutting our properties is without due consideration of how best in the present and impending climate reality to meet the water needs of the golf course and the environmental and ecological needs of our region. So we're asking the board to take a careful look at that. The project at best proposes insufficient mitigation when it should repair the extensive damage and be designed and implemented as a truly sustainable project. We're concerned about public safety with regard to the berm, that it cannot be assured to hold over time with increased intense storms due to climate change, placing our properties at certain risk of flooding. The proposal to take down more trees, including the mature ones that are irreplaceable in our lifetime, is completely unacceptable, especially because established trees are natural earth stabilizers and they have tremendous water holding capacity to prevent flooding. So I just want to list the things that we want you to consider. One is denial of the special permit for the 4 acres of vegetation clearing and the excavation removal from the property of 1,200 cubic yards of topsoil and earth. 2 is to require the club to restore the forest and soil ecosystem it destroyed in violation of the earth removal bylaw. 3rd is to engage a third-party hydrologist to assess the present and anticipated hydrological conditions as climate change impacts intensify over the coming decades, and propose alternative means for the club to meet its water needs. So the hydrology certainly has not been considered in that very important context. 4th is to require that the club's alternatives analysis include a non-engineering solution that restores the destroyed nature and establishes and maintains a state-of-the-art sustainable turf management plan and program, maximizes water conservation. I think the golf course hasn't demonstrated that it's doing all it can in that regard, and also commits the club to seek continuance of a sustainable golf course designation by the Audubon International when that certification comes due in 2022. So our hope is that also that you will require that any engineering solution place the pond and pump house, if that is to be the chosen course. We believe that a non-engineering solution has not been looked at and is really the best solution. But if it ends up that you have a pond and a pump house, that should be placed far away from the Williams Road neighborhood at one of the alternative locations rejected by the club. Rather than locating the project and its impacts squarely at the feet of neighbors, the club should reduce the project's size and scope to fit within the environmental, ecological, and safety limitations of the property. In closing, with these actions, we believe the ZBA will send a very clear message to the Concord Country Club and other projects in Concord, there are more coming, that environmental violations of such large proportion as the Concord Country Club will result in project denial, and these projects will be required to do all that is necessary to come back into compliance, restore the damaged ecosystems, and minimize impacts to abutting properties. Additionally, these actions will show the ZBA's due consideration of the broader community with protection and restoration of ecosystems Concord so desperately needs to buffer the impacts of climate change. So we ask that this information be developed and shown, and alternatives looked at, all the things that I've discussed. It's in letters. We have 2 letters, I said, that have been submitted to the ZBA, and we ask for due consideration of that. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments? Baird? Go ahead. Baird, are you there?
Sorry, I think I was muted.
Right.
Hi, Barrett Comji, 99 Williams Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know it's late. It's been a long meeting. I guess I'm seeking a little guidance here on how to proceed, because there's a couple of things that seem pretty crystal clear to me, some of which relates to what the applicant's attorney has spoken to regarding the bylaws 7.5 and 11.6, a special permit, and some of the impacts on the neighborhoods and things that I think we've discussed previously, and sort of his proposal or his response, we disagree with vehemently about the neighborhood impacts. We have the letter and the written record, and there's a bunch of other stuff. So I can spend time talking about that. We also submitted a letter. I know it was last minute, but we were in response to the planting plan, which again, the applicant provided additional mitigation, but my understanding from the previous meeting and before is that issues regarding what the actual benefit, net benefit, and meeting the actual bylaw standards were in question here. And all that I've seen provided is denial of impact and presented mitigation, and some pending agreements regarding water and sewer, which I will note, water and sewer has very clearly stated since February meeting that having this approval also includes an explicit agreement that the club formally accepts water and sewer's sole discretion in obeying orders from water and sewer to the club to reduce irrigation pumping when water and sewer deems it necessary, typically during drought conditions. And so that particular piece there is in question because the applicant's lawyer has suggested that they are not willing to agree to such terms, at which point the discussion about the neighborhood impact and the potential third-party analysis is moot at this juncture. So I just wanted to get a sense if that is something that would need to be resolved prior, or am I able to discuss about the impact that this project will have on our sightlines and our neighborhood, or can that be revisited? I just don't know how to proceed.
Elizabeth, maybe you can help me out here. I mean, I think we as a board, I mean, we've heard a lot. I think where we're headed, if I can be so presumptuous, is to have Elizabeth work with the other town boards to craft enforceable agreements with the club. Elizabeth, you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, it would be with town staff to take the drought management plan, take the monitoring plan, take the enforcement issues and put those into conditions that can be enforced by the town in different ways. And ultimately, there's enforcement by water and sewer. There's, and Attorney Bobrowski can attest to this, there's the ultimate enforcement by the building commissioner with, imposing, daily fines. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into the drafting of a decision under zoning. So that is what town staff will work with as far as making those conditions enforceable.
I mean, could I also suggest that, you know, I think in the letter we outlined that, I think, you know, part of what it feels is missing is the risk and burden to the town. And, you know, I understand that the applicant is suggesting that there's no impact to the utilities and to town resources, but it does seem that enforcement is a big part of what water and sewer does. And it does seem like this is going to be a long-standing commitment by water and sewer to ensure that the wells aren't compromised, let alone that there's any perceived benefit. And I just feel like the directive to the applicant was very clear that they needed to outline what the benefits to the town are and sell this plan. And, you know, there's a litany of other things regarding what it looks like and, you know, other things that have raised that are outlined in the neighbor's letter that I would hope the board, and again, we greatly appreciate the board's questions. They've been insightful, they've been relevant, but, you know, there is a lot of due diligence that hasn't been done. And I know that the town is not able to enforce private wells currently. And if they were in a position where they had to get to enforcement, it's already too late. That means the town water, it's been a drought, the wells have been compromised. And so town health and safety has been compromised. And so it's an after the fact enforcement. We're dealing with an after the fact permitting process here. We're dealing with an ongoing communication with an applicant that's been taking place since at least January to resolve these issues. And here we are in July. And we're sitting here looking at a project that was started, and it's not just this 1,200 cubic yards. Whoops, as we've discussed, they were on path to remove 56,000 cubic yards and did deep cuts and regrading and all of that we look at every day.
Listen, I'm sorry to do this, but I gotta say,
Yeah,
it's 10:30.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the
It's been
opportunity to speak.
months of us
Yes,
considering
I know.
all this. So
We're
I would
exhausted.
hate for anyone to think that we haven't looked very carefully and considered all of this, but I'm just gonna keep
Okay.
going so I can-
Thank you. No, I appreciate your patience and I'm sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Any other comments? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. Oh, sorry, Rebecca. Rebecca, you snuck in there if you want to say something. but-
Okay, sorry about that. I was unmuting
That's all
myself. Rebecca Comgie, 99 Williams Road. I'll make it quick. First, I just had a question. I know there was talk in the past about doing a 3D model, and it was, which I thought was a great request about what it would look like from all areas of, you know, Williams Road and elsewhere. And I don't know if that's been provided, but I think that would be very helpful to see. And I was just wanted to know where that was.
It's not something that the board had followed up on as a request. Once I close public comment, we can discuss it as a board. Was there anything else or?
I mean, just to also just to follow up on the third-party hydrologist, I know that was discussed at the end of the meeting. And I
Yeah,
know-
and town staff, Elizabeth, you followed up. Can you just briefly, your conversations with Alan or the town?
So I did have a conversation with the Public Works Director, and they did meet with the applicant and Peter Newton. And as I said, the drought management plan and the monitoring plan they have developed, they feel that is, it's very robust. It's, it's something that, the town does not have. Again, need to develop enforceable conditions to deal with that. But the Public Works Director and Water and Sewer staff did not have any issues with Mr. Newton and his expertise and the information that he provided. They did not feel that any of that was inaccurate or flawed in any manner.
Okay, thank you. I mean, my last question would be, do they cover like everything, or does like town and sewer sort of their focus on, you know, a piece of the puzzle? Like would an independent hydrologist sort of look at the big picture and other aspects of this project that perhaps water and sewer isn't focused on? Or, you know, do they cover every possible, you know, not just their piece of the puzzle, so to speak, but, you know, the other aspects that would also could be relevant? Would just be my last question.
I'm not a hydrologist, so I mean, I'm not sure what other elements you would speaking to. You know, the natural resources director, and I believe at the last meeting, Mr. Newton talked about and somebody correct me, is it a piezometer? Is that it, Theo? Okay. That the natural resources director agreed with Mr. Newton that she does not feel that the irrigation well is going to directly impact the flow in Jenny Dugan Brook, but she was definitely supportive of leaving that piezometer in there and incorporating whether it's into that whole monitoring program, incorporating reading the levels of that as well, and incorporating that into the monitoring program and into a condition of approval. So again, the conditions of approval won't just be water and sewer. It's, you know, natural resources. It's, you know, it's engineering. It's, you know, during the construction, it's likely engineering's going to develop a condition that, you know, deals with the on-site, you know, whether it's a soil evaluator or whether it's a, you know, a geotechnical person to, you know, supervise the construction and all of those things. So those are, there's more conditions than just the water and sewer side of things.
And also, let's not forget that there is a DEP permit in place that the club is allowed to pump water currently and doing so. And there are strict limits and reporting requirements on the amount of water that can be pumped out of the ground. So.
Yeah, I guess I was just talking about if there was alternate options, if they really needed the 3 million gallons, you know, if there was something less environmentally degrading, you know, the effects of Jenny Dugan and whatnot. Those are the things I was thinking about that a hydrologist, you know, but maybe this is you know, auditing the numbers, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Again, you're gonna have to listen to our deliberation.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm done.
We're gonna get
Thank
with
you for your
that, but I
time.
think those are all points that we have heard and explored and appreciate you using, but.
Thank you.
But there hasn't been a non-engineering solution looked at. That hasn't been.
I'm sorry, who is talking? Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other hands, so I'm gonna close public hearing and let's deliberate. Here's where I am. This was a project that was not done the correct way. I think it's very clear we were unhappy with that. We have, in my opinion, gone above and beyond to be careful about how this has proceeded from the abutters' point of view. I understand the abutters are not 100% happy with this. I can't tell you what percentage, if at all, they're happy, but in my mind, this is a project that, as it has been presented, would have passed through scrutiny originally. And that's kind of where I am with this, with the alternative, with what has been presented, the alternatives analysis, the benefits to the town of the monitoring, and where we, I hope, are able to get with conditions that are enforceable. I am now at a place where I'm okay with this. Other comments? I'm okay with looking at a decision. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think for me, there's a couple of benefits. It's the planting on the slope that's been presented tonight. I think actually it's a better planting scheme than originally was in place. Yeah, granted, some of the trees were mature, but from a wildlife point of view, it's a better, more varied plan. and it has just more ecological benefits. So I think there is some benefits there. It needs a year or two to grow in, but I think that's better, and I think in the long run, the neighbors will like this, in the long run being a year or two out. And I'm not sure, and I've said it before as well, whether, you know, what benefit it would have to make the golf club, you know, restore the original condition if they could, because the trees don't come back. I mean, I don't think that's to nobody's benefit, and we need to be looking forward. And I totally agree with you, Elizabeth, that if this plan would have been presented as is, you know, a year or two ago, we would have approved it in a hearing or two. Yeah, I'm with you there. And, you know, I'm really, one of the other things as well, sorry, is that, and this was early on, the club mentioned that they have upgraded all the irrigation equipment, you know, the pumps, the heads, the controllers, and to minimize water usage. And I think, you know, it's part of an engineering solution or a non-engineering solution to make the irrigation more effective.
Thanks, Theo. Any other board members?
Yeah, I'll sort of jump in. I just want to, I don't really disagree with what Theo and Elizabeth have said. But I'll sort of summarize my thoughts as the following. First, you know, there's always been, to my mind, three aspects of this. One is the visual impact on the neighbors of this, both the violation and the proposed solution. The second is the sort of, I'll call them hydrological issues in terms of both environmentally, whether having an irrigation pond is sort of better for the environment than the current system, and also the additional benefits that the town may be able to garner from better information, the monitoring, et cetera. The third is just the fact of the violation, which is always very, very difficult to deal with in any of these situations. It puts the entire process in a difficult place because, among other things, as Mr. Bobrowski was talking about today, you have this odd situation where, you know, it's hard to think about whether the country club could have removed soil because they are, you know, because all the criteria are forward looking and they've already removed the soil. And the last thing I would say is that it's also a situation in which we, as I firmly believe this, having served on the planning board and the board and the finance committee and the public works commission, and in particularly on the public works commission, as well as the ZBA, that, you know, at the end of the day, we have to provide a service to our collective citizens. And one of those things is to have a process that ultimately gets to decisions. If we simply let things go on and on and on and on, seeking more and more and more data, that is of detriment to somebody in the process. Much better for us to say no, or to deny, or to seek other things, and to sort of let the process drag on interminably. At the same token, we do want and seek as much information as we possibly can get, but at some point there's diminishing returns to that. So I feel like in this particular process, and partially because of the violations, we've really had to get a lot of data. We've done it from a lot of sources. There have been a lot of changes in the plan. I think that we are at the place of making a decision. I happen to agree with Elizabeth that given the very robust and Theo, that given the robustness of the planting plans, which are really much improved, given where I think our town staff is saying we are with the water issues and these essentially that we can, that we believe we can get there. And if we don't get there, we won't approve it, but we believe we can get there. That that this is a plan that we would have approved over some opposition from the neighbors, and that sometimes that's just the way things work out. The wild card here has been the violation, and as much as the violation has annoyed me, as I've made very clear to the country club over time, I'm also a person who believes in a measured response. And I think that, it's just not in my view that sort of saying, go back, restore all the trees, go to the, just undo everything and sort of put it back in place. I think that's an option sometimes that is an appropriate option, but I honestly don't see that as a appropriate response to the violation here. I think that appropriate responses to the violation have been the additional monitoring, the additional vegetation plans, et cetera, perhaps more than we could have felt like we could have pushed the applicant to do without that. And I think that the delay has also been a factor, but I just don't see that that this should be a nuclear option in response to the level of violation, as much as I don't like the violation. So I think I'm prepared to go forward with at least a review of a decision that would ultimately approve this application.
Great. So it sounds like, unless Ravi or Tom have anything else to add, that what we would ask is a draft decision be made by you, Elizabeth, along with town staff, and that we continue this to our August meeting. Is August long enough here?
Oh, yeah, we'll get that.
Try.
Well, no, we'll get it done. I actually am going on vacation this year.
How dare you? Jeez.
Why? But apparently I'm going to be at a meeting in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, remember that in this case, I've been recused because I had conflicts of interest.
That's right. I'm sorry.
No,
That's right.
no.
You're recused.
Golfer.
But yes, we'll get a draft decision done by August 12th. The question comes down to, there are 4 new applications for your August meeting. I'm not quite sure what exactly they are. So usually we schedule applications like 5 minutes apart. So I would like to schedule this before your 7:20 deliberation. So
okay.
As odd as it sounds, Heather made the suggestion we schedule this for like 7:17.
Let's do it.
Okay. So the agenda will look a little weird, but at least you can go through this decision before you start your 7:20 deliberation.
That sound good, Mr. Bobrowski?
We'll certainly make it work. I thank the board for their careful deliberation and to Elizabeth as well.
Okay, great. All right. Well, if I can get a motion, then let's continue this.
I make a motion to continue this hearing to August 12th, I think it was.
7:17.
And 7:17.
second, Jim, before you fall asleep?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking that's 5:17 Pacific time. Yeah, second.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Right.
Ms. Akers Moore, aye. Isn't it
So-
4:17 Pacific time?
Probably.
Yeah, nicely before dinner.
Yeah, that's perfect. Work up an
Mhm.
appetite and go right to dinner. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Our last item of business, election of officers. Mr. Smith, taking back over as chair. I can't, yeah. So I'm gonna be vice chair and Theo, you're gonna be clerk, right?
So, so somebody should make the nomination of
I-
that
I-
slate of
Yeah,
officers.
as this is a rotating event, I think every year, I would like to nominate Mr. Smith as the new chair for this year.
And Elizabeth as
And Elizabeth as the vice chair.
And
no, he can't.
I will nominate Theo
Can, but-
as clerk.
I'll second it all.
Great, Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Ms. Akers-Moore. Aye, yay. All right, thank you, everyone. I'll see you in August. Elizabeth, you don't have anything else, right? Good night, everyone.
Good night.